Chapter 997. That's Jia Yaluo. He's dead just like that? How is this possible? The experts of the four upper sects were stunned. They rubbed their eyes in disbelief as they could not believe what they were seeing was real. That was a terrifying ghost that had dominated the northern territory of the profound wind domain over 1,000 years ago, and it had killed 3 imperial monarchs and one. This terrifying ominous ghost was actually slaughtered so easily? It was unbelievable. A martial monarch killed a martial emperor so easily. Who exactly is this kid? He doesn't look old. He looks like he's in his 20s at most. Why haven't I heard of such a young martial emperor in the Xianfeng domain? Could he be a disciple of a martial god? Wait, this kid looks familiar. I remember now. He's one of the cultivators from the lower realm who killed the elders of the 5 upper sects in the capital of the Dahan domain. The martial emperor realm expert of the Scarlet Snow sect who was guarding the mountain was shocked. He immediately recalled Fang Yu's identity and said anxiously. Hearing this, the experts of the other 3 upper sects recalled too. The capital of the Dahan domain. 20 to 30 elders of the great martial realm had died in the hands of a few cultivators from the lower realm. This had infuriated the 5 upper sects. If it weren't for the great martial saints of the Jian clan, the 5 upper sects would have gone to the capital of the Dahan domain to seek revenge on Fang Yu and the other cultivators from the lower realm. How is this possible? According to the information, the cultivators from the lower realm were only peak great martial highnesses when they showed up in the capital of the Dahan domain a few months ago. How did this kid become a martial monarch in the blink of an eye? He's even a martial monarch who can easily kill a peerless ghost. The experts of the 4 upper sects panicked. Such a cultivation speed was shocking. It was rare even in the 9 realms of the human realm. In the human realm of the ancient domain, a few young martial monarchs would appear in the 12 overlords every 10,000 years. However, it was unheard of for someone to reach the martial monarch realm from the great martial highness realm in just a few months. Even the overlords had never seen such a genius. Are you guys talking about me? At this moment, a deep voice sounded behind them. One. Taking a closer look, the Sin throne and Fang Yu's figure had already disappeared from the battlefield. They turned around abruptly, and sure enough, Fang Yu was right behind them. Spare me! Please spare my life. We are willing to surrender. Cultivation is not easy, please don't kill us. The powerhouses of the 4 high sects had all been scared out of their wits by the terrifying power of the throne of Sin. At this moment, when they saw Fang Yu, they hurriedly knelt and begged for mercy. Regarding this, Fang Yu gently patted them on the shoulder. His voice was gentle, and there was no hint of coercion as he discussed with them. Go back and tell your respective sect masters. If you want everyone in the sect to survive, quickly prepare all the Xian crystals in the sect's treasury. Even if you keep half a piece for yourself, I'll take the lives of your entire sect. Of course, you can also escape with your entire sect before I come out from the nether prison. However, you have to be able to escape first. This trip to the 5 high sects, on one hand, was to complete the map mission, destroy one of the 5 high sects, and obtain the supreme treasure chest. On the other hand, it was to collect the 1 billion Xian crystals needed to exchange for cultivation. Ao Long Martial City, the 8 major forces, all had Emperor Realm powerhouses. Although they were not as powerful as the 5 high sects, they were not small in scale. Together, the 8 major forces only had less than 100 million Xian crystals. Just destroying the ghost prison alone would not be enough to collect 1 billion Xian crystals. Hence, Fang Yu set his sights on the other 4 high sects as well. Although the 3 generals were injured, these Emperor Realm powerhouses could not do anything to them. The other 4 high sects had no way to escape from Fang Yu's palm. Yes. We'll go back and report this. The powerhouses of the 4 high sects, who were guarding the mountain, rolled and crawled as they left the place. However, in the next moment, when Fang Yu returned to the ghost prison mountain gate and wanted to blast open the gate of the sect world, the ghost prison mountain gate opened from the inside. Obviously, the top powerhouses of the ghost prison had also noticed the death of the Emperor Realm ghost guarding the gate. Ah, I was wondering who was so arrogant, so it's you. Slaughtering the ghost prison and the other 4 high sects in the north to give you life-saving Xian crystals? You're really arrogant. Who do you think you are? The ruler of the Xianfeng domain, the Jian clan. If you were in the domain controlled by the Ghost Palace, you would be dead by now. The first person to walk out of the sects heaven and earth was not the Nether Hell Master as Fang Yu had expected. Instead, it was the rumored direct descendant of the Nether Hall's ancestor. Instead, it was an old acquaintance of Fang Yu's. Half a month ago, the Ghost Palace's Emperor Realm powerhouse, who had almost killed Fang Yu with Xiao Wuxuan. It was Elder Yu. At this moment, when Elder Yu saw that the intruder was Fang Yu, the contempt in his eyes became extremely strong. He sneered. I was wondering who it was. After all this time, isn't this the great saint that Xiao Wuxuan and I played in the palms of the great Han dynasty? Not bad. You've already stepped into the Emperor Realm. It seems that you've gained a lot in the secret realm of the Heavenly Palace ruins. After Xiao Wuxuan was punished by the Jian clan, he searched everywhere for you. It seems that you're lucky that you didn't run into Xiao Wuxuan. Otherwise, the one standing here would be a corpse. Elder Yu's face was full of mockery. However, hearing this, Fang Yu's expression became strange. Xiao Wuxuan? Who said that he hadn't run into Xiao Wuxuan? When he had stepped into the Emperor Realm, Xiao Wuxuan had found him and wanted to kill him. Unfortunately, he had killed Xiao Wuxuan instead. Xiao Wuxuan, a 5-star imperial emperor, had been killed by Fang Yu with a single strike. Naturally, Fang Yu didn't take Elder Yu, who was weaker than Xiao Wuxuan, seriously at all. He treated Elder Yu as a clown. After all, Fang Yu had 3 martial gods working for him, and they were all high-grade 7-star martial gods, 8-star martial gods, and 9-star martial gods. It could be said that, in the vast human world, as long as it wasn't the underworld, the Jian clan, or the Templar Hall, which ranked in the top 3 and had a legacy of 1,000,000 years, it wouldn't be a problem for him. As for the other martial gods' forces, like the Ghost Palace, which only had a foundation of a few 100,000 years, Fang Yu didn't have to fear them at all. Make way. Otherwise you'll die. Fang Yu's tone was indifferent. He did not put this Elder Yu in his eyes at all. The only reason he was talking to him now was because this Elder Yu was blocking his path of sweeping through the Nether prison. Chapter 998. Such threatening words sounded like a huge joke in Elder Yu's ears, and he burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha! What a joke! You just killed a ghost lord who has been imprisoned for 1,000 years and is no longer at his peak. Do you really think that you can fight an Emperor Realm expert? Elder Yu burst into laughter, and he did not take Fang Yu seriously at all. Anyone could see the mockery on his face. To this, Fang Yu did not say a word. He stretched out his hand, and scarlet flames instantly rose from his palm. Then, a divine sword burning with raging flames appeared in Fang Yu's hand. Scarlet Fire Divine Sword. Say it again. Get out of my way, or die. Fang Yu's voice was as cold as ice, and his eyes were as sharp as swords. At this moment, Fang Yu seemed to have transformed into the Sword Emperor from 1,000,000 years ago. The unparalleled Sword Emperor from the lower domain whose sword Dao was unparalleled. Ha 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 ha. You're just a puny emperor. How dare you threaten me? I'm standing right here. I'd like to see how a puny emperor like you can kill me, a great Emperor Realm expert. Elder Yu let out a cold laugh. Boom. In an instant, ghost fog rose into the sky, reaching a height of 1,000 feet, and filled the area. A towering ghost god shadow rose from Elder Yu's body. At this moment, Elder Yu's aura rose to the level of a 6-star Emperor Realm expert. The Great Han royal capital failed to capture you, and the Hall Master was furious. He almost imprisoned me in the 10 Directions Ghost region, where I would never see the light of day. Fortunately, I'm blessed with good fortune. I managed to refine the soul of a 7-star Emperor Realm Great Ghost Venerable into my body. Now, I can be said to be the strongest expert below the 7-star Emperor Realm. Brat, get over here and die. Elder Yu roared ferociously. Above his body, the 1,000 feet tall ghost god shadow roared as it extended its hand and viciously pressed down on Fang Yu. Wherever the phantoms of ghosts and deities passed, the void cracked and exploded. A terrifying pressure descended, sealing off the entire heaven and earth, cutting off Fang Yu's escape route. Are you scared, silly? Are you so scared that you can't even say a word after seeing how powerful I am? Ha ha ha, how interesting. Weren't you showing off just now? Elder Yu let out a hideous laugh. However, the next moment, Fang Yu moved. The crimson fire divine sword in his hand was raised high up in the air. An incomparably sharp and terrifying sword Dao aura burst forth from the deep crevice. I'll only attack once. If you can block it, I'll spare your life today. Fang Yu's voice was slow. Fang Yu had only used one sword to kill Xiao Wuxuan. Right now, against Elder Yu, whose strength had skyrocketed, Fang Yu still only used one sword strike. With the sword Dao that he had inherited from Kenshin of Gojoseon, one sword was enough to kill a puny Emperor Realm Master, even a great Emperor Realm Master. Arrogant! Elder Yu sneered coldly as the gloominess in his eyes deepened. Let's see if you can continue to be so arrogant when you fall later. Brat who doesn't know his place. Boom! At this moment, the ghost god shadow exploded with all its might. The heaven and earth trembled at this moment. However, it wasn't because of the ghostly figure on Elder Yu's body, but because of the terrifying sword strike that Fang Yu had unleashed. Ha ha! The sneer on Elder Yu's face suddenly froze. Boom! The heaven and earth trembled. Before the sword was unleashed, the sky was cut in half by the sword intent attached to the longsword. Such a powerful aura caused Elder Yu's expression to change. Sword God Realm! That's impossible! You're just a puny Emperor Realm Master, how can you have Sword God Realm attainments? What did you get from the Heavenly Palace ruins? Elder Yu roared. At this moment, he finally panicked. He wanted to escape, but with Fang Yu's terrifying sword locked onto him, how could he escape? Boom! Fang Yu's sword finally slashed down. In an instant, that ghostly figure shattered into pieces. Elder Yu's robe was also shredded into pieces by the peerlessly sharp sword Qi. Poof! Blood splattered everywhere. A pitiful figure flew out and crashed into one mountain after another. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. Elder Yu was defeated. There was no suspense in his defeat. As for Fang Yu, he didn't even look at Elder Yu as he walked straight towards the ghost prison sect. He had never taken Elder Yu seriously. Ha! It's indeed Sword God Realm attainments. This brat is truly terrifying to the extreme. It's a pity that he came at this time to challenge the ghost prison sect. I'm afraid there will be a good show to watch. The old ancestor is waiting here, waiting for the divine crystal sealed here to appear. Elder Yu laughed strangely and climbed out of the mountain in a sorry state. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and his aura weakened continuously. After a long time, Elder Yu was speechless. His body stood on the spot as the vitality in his body dissipated rapidly. Unknowingly, he had turned into a corpse. A sword mark appeared on his body. It went from the center of his brows and went straight down. It was as if he had been cut in half, but no blood flowed out. Fang Yu's sword had cut off all of Elder Yu's vitality and soul. There was one more thing that Elder Yu was wrong about. After inheriting Kenshin of Gojoseon's memories, Fang Yu's current Sword Dao attainments were not at the Sword God realm. Instead, he was at the Sword God realm. In fact, he was far above the Sword Dao's supreme principle. The king of the gods was above the supreme gods. 1,000,000 years ago, the Sword God King's attainments in the way of the sword had naturally surpassed the supreme rules of the way of the sword. In the same moment that Elder Yu perished, and Fang Yu entered the netherworld purgatory, there were 12 figures sitting cross-legged in front of a door in the depths of the sect. At that instant, the 12 figures all opened their eyes. They were all Emperor Realm Masters. The Overlord Martial God's Force, the 12 Protectors of Ghost Hall, the 12 Great Emperors standing here. Hanshin has come to the Profound Wind territory. If the old monster of the Jian clan knows about this, it will definitely cause a conflict. An uninvited guest. Kill him and throw his corpse out. Don't make too much noise. The ancient divine crystal sealed in this world is about to come out. Remember to end this quickly. The voice of an old man could be heard from the door. It was filled with an imperious aura. If the cultivators of the Jian clan were here, they would be able to recognize that it was the founder of Ghost Hall. The old ancestor had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. He was an 8-star ghost sword god, the ghost sword god, who had founded Ghost Hall. Yes, the 12 figures received the order and turned into flowing lights. They rushed out of the ghost prison and headed toward Fang Yu. Chapter 999. As soon as Fang Yu stepped into the netherworld, he sensed that something was wrong. This place was a little too quiet. Although the vegetation was lush and the vitality was dense, he couldn't hear the chirping of insects or birds. It was as if there was no one in this place. How strange! The monarch ghost guarding the mountain and Elder Yu of the Nether Pavilion died one after another. But I don't see any ghost prison masters coming to kill me. Ghost Prison is the head of the 5 great sects of the Northern Territory. It is rumored that there are many Emperor Realm Masters in the sect. Even the gatekeeper is an Emperor Ghost. How can he be weak? Fang Yu sensed that something was wrong. Looking at the eerily silent the netherworld, he took out an ancient spirit array from his chest. The Heavenly Fate Chart. The Heavenly Palace, one of the 3 treasures of the Saint Realm. Previously, in the proud dragon Martial City, half of the credit for obtaining the second fragment of the godly slaughter sword was due to the Heavenly Fate Chart. Tell me, how will this trip be? As he spoke, Fang Yu took out a huge amount of mysterious crystals from the system space and poured them on the Heavenly Fate Chart. Boom! 200,000 mysterious crystals. 700,000 mysterious crystals. 1,000,000 mysterious crystals. 3,000,000 mysterious crystals. The Heavenly Fate Chart shone with a terrifying light. It was several thousand feet tall. After swallowing almost 3,000,000 mysterious crystals, it started to calculate slowly. If Fang Yu hadn't robbed the proud dragon Martial City, he wouldn't have been able to take out so many mysterious crystals. 3,000,000 mysterious crystals? Why is it so expensive? Previously, in the proud dragon Martial City, I obtained the second fragment of the godly slaughter sword and recovered my luck. But it only cost me 700,000 mysterious crystals. Fang Yu frowned. It was just a calculation of the fortune of the ghost prison, but it cost so many mysterious crystals. It was unbelievable. Could it be that there were other forces in the ghost prison other than the ghost prison overlord and the original ghost prison experts? Fang Yu believed that someone who could make the heavenly fate wheel swallow such a vast amount of mysterious crystals was a martial god overlord faction hiding in this ghost prison. 1. Spirit light shone brightly. After the heavenly fate chart swallowed the 3,000,000 Xian crystals, a line of words finally appeared. This trip is both inauspicious and auspicious. Whether I die or soar into the sky, it all depends on today. Be careful. This time, the result of the heavenly fortune natal chart was very simple. It wasn't like the last time when the heavenly fortune natal chart had marked out the dangers of the Jian family. In the memories of the Sky Palace that Fang Yu had inherited, there was no record of the destiny plate being like this. This was the first time the destiny plate was like this. Looks like this nether prison is probably extremely dangerous, yet it hides an extremely great fortune. Fang Yu sneered. Boom. In the next moment, a gust of wind raged. With a leap, he soared up into the clouds. Everywhere he passed by, raging gusts of wind blew in all directions, exuding his extraordinary immortal emperor might. At this moment, Fang Yu was heading deeper into the ghost prison. No matter where he was, the ghost prison experts could see Fang Yu clearly. What an arrogant guy! He's swaggering about and not concealing his tracks in the slightest. He's only a tiny emperor, so where did he get such courage from? Bastard! Lord Hellmaster, please give the order for your subordinates to go and kill this damned madman. He is stepping on the head of our ghost prison. In a sealed hall, many Emperor Realm experts of the ghost prison, a total of 9, stood there, roaring angrily at the prison overlord who was sitting high above. The entire hall was incomparably eerie and filled with cold ghost chi. There was 1 Emperor Realm Master here, 3 Emperor Realm Masters, 5 Peak Emperor Realm Masters. Unfortunately, they couldn't make any decisions at all in the ghost prison. The real master of this small world had become the founder of the Ghost Hall, the Ghost Sword God. Silence. At this moment, the old ancestor will naturally deal with it. If you all continue to clamor, don't blame this king for being ruthless and pulling you all out as nourishment for the birth of the divine crystal, Prison Overlord Ghost said coldly. In an instant, the hall fell silent. Outside the hall, there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood. It was a tragic scene in the Shura prison. The corpses here were all the disciples and elders of the ghost prison. From the ordinary Martial Grand Master Realm servants to the Peak Great Saint Realm Core elders of the ghost prison, they had all become nourishment for the birth of the divine crystal. At this moment, Fang Yu, who had transformed into a fierce wind dragon, also arrived at the ghost prison's sect at this moment. He could clearly see this Shura prison. Fang Yu stopped in his tracks. What's going on? Before I came here, the nether prison had already been destroyed by someone? The number of ghost prison's disciples who died here is at least 108,000. At this moment, Fang Yu recalled the results of the divination of the heavenly secret fate chart and frowned. Boom. At this moment, 12 long rainbows cut through the sky and rushed over from the depths of the netherworld. They were the 12 great emperors of the Ghost Hall. The 12 great emperors were all 7-star great emperors. Even so, an indescribable sense of pressure attacked Fang Yu, as if it wanted to directly crush Fang Yu's soul. Fang Yu was not interested in the 12 great emperors. He was interested in the person who had slaughtered the ghost prison and set up such a blood sacrifice array. This was the ghost prison sect. Under the mountains of corpses and seas of blood, the array patterns were particularly eye-catching, absorbing the aura of the ferocious bloody corpses. Kid, blame your bad luck. You saw something you shouldn't have seen, and you even came at a time when you shouldn't have. You disturbed our plans. Ancestor personally said that you should die. No one here dares to let you live. Leave your life here. The 12 great emperors roared and brazenly attacked. With a wave of their hands, terrifying great divine powers covered the sky and the sun. At this moment, the originally bright sky instantly became gloomy. Billowing black fog gathered and covered the sky, sealing off the netherworld, making it difficult for Fang Yu to leave. Then, 12 terrifying evil ghost Dharma idols instantly took shape. They all had 9 heads and 36 arms, and were surrounded by terrifying demonic wheels. Each of these 12 terrifying evil ghost Dharma idols could easily tear apart a 7-star great emperor. They were comparable to an 8-star great emperor. The 12 evil ghost Dharma idols attacked together and stood in the almost sealed battlefield. Even a 9-star great emperor could be easily killed. Facing a mere great emperor like Feng Yu, the 12 Shura guardians of the Ghost Hall had come up with such a lineup. It was really like a lion hunting a rabbit, not holding back at all. Chapter 1000. You're really thinking highly of me. If I'm not wrong, what you're using is the secret technique of the Ghost Hall, the 12 Shura evil spirit bodies. Rumor has it that the 12 Shura evil spirit bodies can even kill a martial god if they're all at the 9-star Great Emperor realm. Haha. On the other hand, those who are able to cultivate the 12 Azura ghouls are called 12 Azura protectors in the Nether Pavilion. In this way, you all want to silence me and protect this secret. This is really making me more and more curious. Facing the 12 Shura guardians of the Ghost Hall, Feng Yu smiled indifferently. His body was burning with raging scarlet flames. In an instant, the scarlet flame armor and the scarlet flame divine sword appeared. Rumble! The earth cracked and the sky trembled. At this moment, behind Feng Yu, there was also a terrifying throne that was tens of thousands of feet tall. It was extremely majestic, and it was filled with a black and red aura. Now, the Sin Throne, which had become Feng Yu's emperor's origin, had also appeared. In the face of the 12 Shura guardians, whose cultivation was far higher than his, Feng Yu did not dare to be careless. He used all his trump cards, Divine Suit, and the Sin Throne. This was one of Feng Yu's trump cards. Of course, for Feng Yu, the real reason why he dared to fight the 12 Shura guardians head-on was because of the sword principle that he had inherited. Kenshin of Gojoseon's pinnacle sword principle. The absolute sword principle that was above everything. My sword can split the sky, split the earth, kill the gods and kill all enemies. At this moment, on the towering Sin Throne, Feng Yu walked slowly with the sword in his hand. A terrifying sword essence that could destroy the world rose from his body. With Feng Yu's cultivation, it was impossible for Kenshin of Gojoseon's absolute sword principle divine ability to be used. However, Feng Yu was qualified to use the strongest sword that Kenshin of Gojoseon had comprehended when he was in the Emperor realm. Normally, Kenshin of Gojoseon had used this sword to kill a martial god when he was in the Emperor realm. At this moment, Feng Yu, with his 1-star Emperor realm cultivation, did not want to kill a martial god. He only wanted to kill the 12 guardian emperors. What an incomparably sharp sword chi! Ha ha! It's a pity that you're just a little emperor. If you were a little stronger, a 7-star Emperor Realm Master, who is in the same realm as the 12 of us, you might really be able to achieve the magnificent record of killing the 12 Shura Guardians with a single sword. At this very moment, the 12 Azura protectors all had mocking expressions on their faces as they began to laugh heartily. Their words were full of mockery and ridicule. The 12 Azura protectors didn't take this puny Emperor Realm expert seriously at all. One had to know that the 12 Shura Guardians could even kill a peak 9-star Great Emperor Realm Master when they unleashed their full battle strength. A 9-star Great Emperor Realm Master was the peak of the 3 great divine abilities. This little emperor was thousands of miles away from a 9-star Great Emperor Realm Master. Naturally, they did not take Feng Yu seriously. However, at this moment, in the depths of the netherworld, the ghost sword god's face changed drastically as he sensed the terrifying sword Dao aura that belonged to the Kenshin of Gojoseon on Feng Yu's body. He was terrified to the extreme. No! This sword Dao is, how is this possible? 1,200,000 years ago, this old man watched him from the heaven realm. He entered the god realm and never came out again. How could he appear in the lower realm? It's just that he has received his inheritance. It's impossible for him to display such a sword Dao aura that is almost of the same origin. Boom! In the depths of the netherworld, the door suddenly exploded, and an old and withered man, who was as thin as a bamboo pole, with eyes as sharp as a blade, slowly walked out at this moment. Boom! Just a moment ago, this old man was still outside this door. The next moment, the old man's figure appeared in front of the 12 Shura guardians and Fang Yu's terrifying sword attack. Stand down. He has a relationship with the Kenshin of Gojoseon. Although the 12 of you are in the Emperor realm, you are no match for his sword attack. You are not worthy of being his opponent. Stand down. The old man shouted sternly. When the 12 Azura protectors heard this, they didn't even see who it was. When they heard such humiliating words, they were instantly enraged. However, in next to no time, they discerned the identity of this person. Surprisingly, it was their master, the founding ancestor of the Nether Pavilion. The fundamental reason why the Ghost Hall stood among the 12 overlords was because of the 8-star martial god realm, the Ghost Sword God. Their old ancestor. The 12 Shura guardians were terrified and hurriedly retreated. Boom! In the next moment, Fang Yu swung his sword. The sword attack with a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and earth descended like a rainbow that pierced through the heavens and earth. This sword attack was extremely terrifying. Wherever it passed, the ghost chi battlefield that seemed to have sealed the heavens and earth shattered in an instant. The bodies of the 12 evil Azura ghosts with 9 heads and 36 arms turned into black smoke when they came into contact with the slightest bit of the sword's power, and disappeared in an instant. However, just as this sword attack was about to hit the old man's body, boom! The old man made his move. The ghost sword god's eyes shone brightly and a terrifying saber Dao aura rose. A towering giant saber shadow took shape in an instant and slashed fiercely at the sword attack. Boom! The heavens fell and the earth cracked. At this moment, the aftermath of the collision between the saber and the sword spread out. The 12 Shura evil spirits with 9 heads and 36 arms were all shattered into pieces. The old man was unharmed. Behind his body, the terrifying shadow of the giant saber only dimmed a little. As for the terrifying sword attack that Fang Yu had unleashed, it shattered into pieces and the force of the impact sent Fang Yu flying. Even the Sin throne that Fang Yu was sitting on shook violently and crashed into the ground of the ghost prison. Puff! Fang Yu spat out a mouthful of blood and crawled out of the collapsed mountain in a sorry state. He did not even have time to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. So powerful! The power of this saber attack is so strong. Sir, you are an 8-star martial god. Why didn't you use the power of your cultivation when you used that attack? If you utilized the energy of your cultivation, then with my tiny cultivation at the Emperor realm, I would have probably been obliterated on the spot and perished on the spot. Fang Yu stared coldly at the ghost sword god and said slowly. At that moment, his life was indeed on the line. If the ghost sword god had the slightest intention to kill, Fang Yu would have been the one to die. However, the strange thing was that the old man did not use the slightest bit of his cultivation when the terrifying sword attack collided with the giant saber shadow. Chapter 1001. Facing an 8-star martial god alone was something that Fang Yu had never expected when he came. In Fang Yu's opinion, even though the ghost prison was the leader of the 5 great sects in the northern region, it was only an emperor-level force. The strongest one was only 1 or 2 emperor realm masters. However, a martial god had appeared here, and he was the old ancestor of an overlord martial god force, an 8-star martial god who had become famous hundreds of thousands of years ago. You're not him. Hanshin almost thought that the terrifying and arrogant Kenshin of Gojoseon had returned from the human world again. It turns out that you're not him. You're just the direct descendant he chose. It's a pity that I was happy for nothing, the haggard old man, who was as thin as a bamboo pole, recalled the terrifying aura of the sword just now. He shook his head and sighed, his face full of disappointment. Ghost Sword God. Wasn't this Nether Saber God a martial god who was born a few 100,000 years ago, made a name for himself in the world, and started to roam freely in the mortal world? Why did he seem to know the terrifying Kenshin of Gojoseon, who came from the lower world 2 million years ago and caused chaos in the three realms? Fang Yu felt strange when he heard this. However, before he could think too much, Fang Yu began to plan his next retreat. An 8-star martial god, a terrifying martial god like the Ghost Sword God. Even in the inherited memory of the Heavenly Palace, there were many records of this old senior's illustrious battle achievements. This old senior could not be treated as an ordinary 8-star martial god. He was at least a peak 9-star martial god. Although he was not at the level of the 3 supreme martial gods, the strongest old ancestor of the Jian clan, and Xianjian Valkyrie, he could not be underestimated. It could be said that, if this Ghost Sword God attacked, an ordinary 9-star martial god would not be able to last more than 30 rounds in his hands. 1. Under Fang Yu's sleeve, the crystal of destiny emerged. It was spinning. It could devour Fang Yu's providence at any time, and then borrow power from the past and future to fight against this terrifying Ghost Sword God. Boom. The next moment, the void cracked and 3 gates appeared. Thunder, blizzard, and a quiet wind had arrived. Their terrifying martial god realm auras swept across the entire the netherworld. 3 martial gods, and they are all high-level martial gods? How is this possible? Why have I never heard of these 3 martial gods in the human world? They are so unfamiliar, as if they appeared out of nowhere. Protector Shura stood to the side. When he saw Lei and the other 2 martial god realm generals who had suddenly descended, his expression changed greatly as he felt uneasy. Could it be that the Ghost Palace's plan to obtain the ancient divine crystal had been exposed? Did the other 12 martial god realm overlords already know about it? What scared them the most was that the Xianfeng domain was the territory of the Jian tribe. The strongest ancestor of the Jian tribe was known as the strongest expert in the human world, who was closest to the 3rd realm of the god realm. If the ancestor of the Jian tribe was here, the Ghost Palace would not be able to obtain the ancient divine crystal. Master, are you all right? The 3 generals scanned the crowd with sharp eyes, causing the 12 protectors of the Ghost Palace to tremble in fear. In the end, they swept past the Ghost Sword God and arrived in front of Fang Yu, their eyes filled with concern. What? These 3 high-grade martial gods are calling an ant like this kid their master? Where did this kid come from? Is he the illegitimate son of the master of the heaven realm in the human world? The 12 Azura protectors turned pale with fright. They looked at this ant that they didn't even put in their eyes, but their eyes were filled with reverence. Even the Ghost Sword God, who was standing to the side, cast a sidelong glance at him with interest. Kid, are these 3 high-level martial gods one of the inheritances that Kenshin of Gojoseon left for you? However, this doesn't seem like the style of Kenshin of Gojoseon. The Ghost Sword God laughed coldly. At this moment, Fang Yu glanced at the Ghost Sword God and saw a faint mark on his spirit. Fang Yu, who had merged with the memories of Kenshin of Gojoseon, could not be more familiar with this mark. This was the slave mark left behind by the Kenshin of Gojoseon when he wreaked havoc in the 3 realms 2 million years ago, conquering the 4 realms and enslaving hundreds of millions of native experts of the ancient region. Every person who was defeated by the Kenshin of Gojoseon would have this slave mark on their spirit and body. It represented their identity as slaves who had been defeated. Slave mark of the loser? Ghost Sword God, who are you? Aren't you a martial god who was born 3 to 500,000 years ago? Why does your spirit have the slave mark of the loser that Kenshin of Gojoseon used when he conquered the 4 realms and enslaved the native creatures of the ancient region 2 million years ago? Fang Yu's expression changed as he shouted. At this moment, under his sleeves, Fang Yu clenched the crystal of destiny in his hand. Today, he might have to use this evil ancient treasure of time with his life on the line. The ancient treasure of time and the crystal of luck did not have a good ending. The spirit of the previous master of the heavenly palace was like this. In the inherited memories of the heavenly palace, generations of users had all died miserably, and their endings were extremely miserable. When Fang Yu used the glazed luck crystal in Ao Long Martial City, he had to rely on the golden dragon of luck in his body, which was twice the size of his body, and the items he had obtained from the treasure chest, the 10 times luck amplification card. Only then could he barely offset the side effects of the glazed luck crystal. This time, if he used the crystal of luck again, Fang Yu did not have the 10 times luck amplification card or the golden dragon of luck to offset the side effects. However, dying miserably in my endings is better than dying on the spot now. Fang Yu made up his mind. At this moment, the underworld sword god looked at Fang Yu with eyes as sharp as blades. It was as if he could see through all of Fang Yu's secrets. Ha ha! As the direct descendant of the Kenshin of Gojoseon, your sword Dao aura must not have been learned through hard work. Since you share the same origin and are almost the same person as him, you must have inherited part of his memory. If that's the case, why didn't you recognize Hanshin? Hanshin does not believe that Hanshin is just a nobody in his memory. After all, he killed Hanshin 13 times. The ghost sword god had a complicated expression on his face when he talked about the Kenshin of Gojoseon. There was admiration, fear, and admiration, but there was no hatred. Killed 13 times in a row? Did the Kenshin of Gojoseon have such a person in his life of conquering the 3 realms of the ancient regions? Fang Yu was astonished. He tried to think back, but he couldn't recall the identity of this underworld saber god from 1,200,000 years ago. Chapter 1002. In the Sky. The ghost sword god's withered face was filled with disbelief. He stared blankly at Fang Yu and asked in astonishment, "Is there no memory of me, Yi Wangzuan, in Kenshin of Gojoseon's lifetime of battles? 1,200,000 years ago, Hanshin regarded him as a lifelong rival. How could Hanshin be a nobody in his eyes?" The ghost sword god's face was filled with disbelief. Then, his body trembled. The complicated emotions in his eyes, such as admiration, fear, and respect, disappeared. They were replaced by rage and bone-piercing killing intent. The ghost sword god was enraged. Hanshin regarded him as a lifelong rival and fought with him 13 times. He admired him, feared him, and looked up to him. But he doesn't even remember who Hanshin is? Seeing that the ghost sword god, the ancestor of the ghost palace, was about to lose control, Fang Yu immediately tightened his grip on the crystal of luck under his sleeve. The 3 martial gods, including General Thunder, stood in front of Fang Yu to protect him. They stared coldly at the ghost sword god and prepared for battle. At this moment, Fang Yu finally asked the question. "Senior Ghost, may I ask what kind of relationship you had with the Kenshin of Gojoseon 1,200,000 years ago? You killed him 13 times in a row. There is no memory of you in the Kenshin of Gojoseon's battles in the 3 realms of the ancient realm. Is there a misunderstanding?" Fang Yu said slowly. At this moment, Fang Yu was extremely nervous. He could use the crystal of luck at any time. It could allow him to cross the river of time and borrow the power of future cultivation at any time. With the strength of the 3 martial gods, even if they could not defeat the ghost sword god, they could buy enough time for Fang Yu to use the crystal of luck. Ha 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 ha. It's true. The arrogant Kenshin of Gojoseon really doesn't remember Hanshin. Come to think of it, this deity has unilaterally treated him as a lifelong rival, but he only treats this deity as a nobody. The ghost sword god roared furiously. At the side, the nether pavilion's 12 Azura protectors all knelt before the underworld saber god, their faces filled with fear. It had been so many years. This was the first time they had seen their ancestor so angry and lose his composure. If this went on, their ancestor would start a massacre. Unfortunately, they could not stop their ancestor at all. They did not even understand what the Kenshin of Gojoseon meant about lifelong rival. After all, Feng Yu and the ghost sword god were talking about people and things from 2 million years ago. Hanshin, today I will tell you who Hanshin is. When Kenshin of Gojoseon was at the Emperor realm, he used that to kill a peak 3-star martial god. That peak 3-star martial god was one of my clones in the human realm. It was also the first time Kenshin of Gojoseon killed him. Also 2 million years ago, the master of the human realm and the master of the heaven realm in 2 of the 3 realms of the ancient realm were also my clones. At this point, Feng Yu's face was already filled with shock. He stared in astonishment at the withered figure of the underworld blade god, who resembled a bamboo pole. He was at a loss for words. This was because he could vaguely guess the identity of the ghost sword god 2 million years ago. If it's really him, General Thunder, General Blizzard, and General A Quiet Wind, even if the 3 martial gods were at their peak, they would still be no match for him. Only when Xianjian Valkyrie is here can he fight with this ghost sword god. I'm so stupid. How could I have angered this guy? Feng Yu felt his scalp go numb. Without any hesitation, he injected his cultivation power into the crystal of luck in his hand and instantly used it. If the underworld saber god was the same supreme deity from 1,200,000 years ago, the 3 martial god realm generals would not be able to stop him for even a moment. Crystal of luck. I'll give you all the luck. Give me the strongest cultivation power I can borrow. Feng Yu roared in his heart. At this moment, it could be said that this was the biggest life and death crisis he had encountered in the 9 realms of the human realm since he had arrived in the ancient realm. The ghost sword god, who was in the sky, saw all of this, but he had no intention of stopping him. He looked mockingly at the crystal of luck in Feng Yu's hand. Obviously, he also recognized that it was a god-level ancient treasure of the celestial palace. Even so, he did not stop him at all. This was because, in his eyes, no matter how powerful Feng Yu was, he could not reach the upper limit of the human realm. He was still an ant that he could crush with a wave of his hand. The underworld sword god spoke slowly as he explained his final identity. Haha. The last battle between Hanshin and Kenshin of Gojoseon took place 2 million years ago. It was at the peak of the divine realm. On that day, Kenshin of Gojoseon swept through the celestial realm and the human realm. His true body descended to the divine realm and fought the 10 supreme gods of the divine realm at that time. At this point, the ghost sword god paused. He looked at Feng Yu, whose cultivation level was rising with the help of the crystal of luck, and slowly revealed his name. Hanshin was the leader of the 10 supreme gods of the divine realm at that time. Now that he has fallen, he is Yi Wangzuan, who was the most promising candidate to take over the divine king's authority and rule over the 3 realms. The ghost sword god sneered. When Feng Yu heard these words, his scalp went numb and he was terrified to the extreme. It was really him. He was one of the 2 kings who fought for the divine king's authority 2 million years ago. Yi Wangzuan. Kenshin of Gojoseon, who had not yet become the king of the divine realm, was still called Sword Wangzun. When he became the uncrowned king of the divine realm, the divine king's authority would automatically descend. From then on, this lower realm sword emperor became Kenshin of Gojoseon. It's you! Kenshin of Gojoseon, the greatest enemy of my life when I ascended to the divine realm. One of the two kings fought to the death, and I won by a narrow margin. Yi Wangzuan, who is still engraved in the memories passed down by Kenshin of Gojoseon to this day. You are Night God Wangzun, that quasi-god king? How is that possible? Fang Yu roared in shock and anger. These words were completely fabricated by Fang Yu. The greatest enemy of his life, engraved in the memories, they were all lies. This Yi Wangzuan, if Fang Yu had not taken the initiative to recall, he would not have been able to find this person in the inherited memories of Kenshin of Gojoseon. From this, it could be seen. In the eyes of Kenshin of Gojoseon, who was blinded by hatred in the past and only wanted to slaughter all living beings in the three realms of the ancient realm, Yi Wangzuan was no different from an ordinary nobody. Fang Yu deliberately said these words to cater to the terrifying ghost sword god. After all, if they really fought, he might not be able to defeat the ghost sword god. Even if he took out the time glass crystal, the result would still be the same. Chapter 1003. A Lifelong Rival. Unforgettable? Does the Kenshin of Gojoseon really remember Hanshin? The underworld blade god's body was withered and emaciated. However, when he heard Fang Yu's words, his eyes suddenly lit up and shone with an unprecedented brilliance. At this moment, the amount of cultivation power borrowed from the Crystal of Destiny had reached its limit. The Martial God Realm. He had just reached the Martial God Realm. He wanted to advance to a higher realm, such as the Medial Grade Martial God Realm, or even the Advanced Grade Martial God Realm. However, there seemed to be some kind of barrier that firmly restrained the cultivation power that he wanted to advance. With such a cultivation level, the combat strength that Fang Yu could unleash was not as strong as the 9-star Martial God General Thunder. How could he be a match for the Ghost Sword God? Before Fang Yu could go up, the Ghost Sword God would probably send him to hell with a backhand slash. It's true. Of course it's true. In the past, during the Battle of the Divine Realm, the two kings fought for the throne. It could be considered the most thrilling and peak battle of the Kenshin of Gojoseon's life. How could the Kenshin of Gojoseon not remember you? How could you be a nobody? In front of the Ghost Sword God, Fang Yu was eagerly thinking of a way to break out of this situation. However, he still forced himself to deliberately pander to the Ghost Sword God and lie. Not far away, the 12 Shura guardians of the Ghost Palace looked at their ancestor, who kept losing his composure because of the so-called Kenshin of Gojoseon's senses. They all looked embarrassed. It was the first time they had seen their ancestor like this. Under such circumstances, they lowered their heads and pretended that they had seen nothing. They were afraid that when their ancestor came to his senses, he would kill them to silence them. Their ancestor, who was addicted to killing, might really do such a thing. Ha! Boy, after hearing what you said, Hanshin is in a much better mood now. Thinking about it, Hanshin is one of the two kings who fought for the Divine King's authority with him. At that time, Hanshin had already absorbed the authority of the heavenly realm and the human realm. He only needed to touch the authority of the divine realm to become the second divine king. How could the Kenshin of Gojoseon not remember me, Yi Wangzuan? The underworld saber god said with a chuckle in the sky. However, just as Fang Yu heaved a sigh of relief and felt that his life was saved, the netherworld blade god's expression suddenly turned cold and ruthless as he stared straight at Fang Yu. No. Of Gojoseon. Speaking of which, Hanshin is really curious. How did he fall? 2 million years ago, he had clearly inherited the authority of the Divine King. He swept through the 3 realms with his army and took all the beings of the ancient region as his servants. Why did he suddenly disappear? Boom. Hearing this, Fang Yu felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His scalp went numb, and he was terrified to the extreme. Everything he had said just now was false. Not a single word was true. In Kenshin of Gojoseon's memories, Yi Wangzuan was nothing. If the ghost sword god really saw these memories and felt humiliated, the former Yi Wangzuan would probably lose his mind on the spot and tear him to pieces. Moreover, Kenshin of Gojoseon's memories had fused with Fang Yu's spirit. If someone were to flip through it, would he, Fang Yu, still be alive? No. Ghost Sword God, I respect you because you were a senior of the same generation as Kenshin of Gojoseon in the past. That's why I've tolerated you so much. Don't push your luck. Otherwise, don't blame me, Fang Yu, for being merciless with my sword. Thunder. Blizzard. A quiet wind. Hurry up and attack. At that moment, Fang Yu's voice was as loud as thunder. As he roared, the scarlet flame divine sword in his hand burst forth with an extremely dazzling brilliance. In the memories, Fang Yu had displayed the attainments in the way of the sword that he had inherited from Kenshin of Gojoseon to the extreme. That sword could kill a 7-star martial god. At that moment, Fang Yu's cultivation had reached the martial god realm with the help of the power he had borrowed from the glass luck crystal. On the side, Thunder and the other 2 high-grade martial gods were supporting him. They were not without a fighting chance against the dazzling ghost sword god. Together with Fang Yu and the 3 war generals, the 4 martial gods charged toward the ghost sword god to suppress him. If it had been any other 8-star martial god, they would have been terrified and taken the initiative to retreat. However, Fang Yu and the others were facing the ghost sword god. This 8-star martial god had become famous hundreds of thousands of years ago. He was the reincarnation of a quasi-divine king 2 million years ago. Ha 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 ha. You are nothing but ants. Do you think you are qualified to attack this god? Thunder, blizzard, and a quiet wind. Even before the 3 of you fell, you could only kneel down and submit to me, Yi Wangzuan. The 3 of you have already refined your bodies into martial god realm avatars. Are you even worthy of baring your fangs and brandishing your claws at me? Get lost. The ghost sword god said coldly. Boom. In the next moment, behind the withered body of the ghost sword god, there was a terrifying giant saber shadow that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall. It slashed horizontally. Boom. At that moment, the world fell silent. Then, in the next moment, the power of the entire world seemed to have been cut into half by this slash of the saber. Poof! Blood splattered everywhere. General Thunder, General Blizzard, and General A Quiet Wind, the 3 high-grade martial gods were sent flying like kites with broken strings. As for Fang Yu, the successor of Kenshin of Gojoseon, he did not take the main force of the illusory giant saber shadow head-on. However, his internal organs were injured by the aftershock. He fell from the sky with blood spurting out of his mouth. It was not because Fang Yu and the 3 generals were too weak. It was because the ghost sword god in front of them was too powerful. This netherworld saber god was like a max-level boss of the god realm who had opened a max-level smurf account in the mortal world. In the 9 realms of the human realm, only Kanzu from the Jian clan, Hao Yang and Han Yue who had their true souls in their bodies, and Xianjian Valkyrie, who had obtained the inheritance of Kenshin of Gojoseon, could exchange blows with the ghost sword god. No matter how powerful Fang Yu was, he could only dominate an ordinary overlord martial god. He was still far from being able to deal with a senior like the ghost sword god from a million years ago. Ghost sword god. Let me give you a piece of advice. If you look through the memories of Kenshin of Gojoseon, you will definitely regret it. You will definitely regret it. Fang Yu stared at the ghost sword god as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Yi Wangzuan cared a lot about the opinion of the terrifying genius who had defeated him, Kenshin of Gojoseon. Unfortunately, he was destined to be disappointed. He might even go crazy over it. This was because in Kenshin of Gojoseon's eyes, Yi Wangzuan was nothing. He was just a nobody. He had killed him 13 times in a row, but Kenshin of Gojoseon still did not remember him. Noisy. The ghost sword god walked over and instantly appeared beside Fang Yu. With just one sentence, a terrifying aura came crashing down. Fang Yu's soul suffered a heavy blow, and he instantly fainted. Chapter 1004. In the boundless darkness. Fang Yu's consciousness was muddled. He wandered in the darkness and couldn't remember anything. He even forgot who he was. The last time he was in such a situation was when the god-slaying sword devoured the rules of death and stirred the heavenly gods to obtain the memories of Kenshin of Gojoseon. Who am I? Where is this place? Confused, Fang Yu walked out of the darkness. A light flashed in his mind, and he remembered everything. He was in Nether Prison, and had come here to complete the map mission. However, he didn't see any powerful beings from the Ghost Prison. Instead, he encountered the founder of the Ghost Palace, the 8-star martial god, the reincarnation of Yi Wangzuan, the Ghost Sword God. The Ghost Sword God. This was a terrifying old monster who had lived for more than 1,000,000 years. Fang Yu had used all his trump cards, including 3 martial gods, but he was still no match for the Netherworld Saber God with just a wave of his hand. Ghost Sword God, didn't you want to check the memories of Kenshin of Gojoseon in my spirit? Why am I here? Have I already died? Is this the Yellow Spring Underworld? Fang Yu turned pale with fright. At this moment, the darkness slowly receded in Fang Yu's line of sight, revealing the true appearance of this place. This was an ancient altar that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall. It was covered in dried bloodstains and sword scars. At this moment, Fang Yu was standing on this ancient altar. He was like an ant riding on a giant ship. Fang Yu's figure appeared especially small in this ancient altar. Even the sword scars on the altar were far larger than Fang Yu. Is anyone there? Where is this place? Fang Yu asked tentatively. However, there was no response at all. All that was left were the echoes of his words. Fang Yu moved forward, climbing over the tall walls of the ancient altar with great difficulty. Finally, he saw the scene outside the ancient altar. Every single one of them didn't have the appearance of a human. Instead, they had all sorts of shapes and sizes. They were ferocious like beasts, yet they were far different from beasts. Each of their auras was as terrifying as an abyss, which was on par with the martial gods that Fang Yu had seen before. Where is this place? Fang Yu was horrified. Suddenly, he recalled the killing intent that Godslayer had left behind when his spirit had sunk into the space of his consciousness when he had just obtained the slaughter order of 10 directions. In that mysterious space, Fang Yu saw mountains of corpses and seas of blood, as well as corpses that were tens of thousands of feet tall. None of the corpses belonged to humans. They were extremely huge, and each of them was emitting an aura that was on par with the martial god realm, or even stronger than the martial god realm. They were like deities and demons. That's right. Outside the altar, these magnificent existences are all deities and demons. Chaos deities, ancient deities and demons. Suddenly, an ancient voice echoed behind Fang Yu. Fang Yu's heart shuddered. He turned around but did not see anyone. There was only a stone tablet that had merged with the altar. There were 4 words written on the tablet. Deity and Demon Altar. The 4 words on the stone tablet seemed to contain an indescribable power. Fang Yu couldn't help but feel reverence in his heart. He couldn't help but want to worship them. However, before Fang Yu could truly bow down to him, buzz buzz buzz. A sharp buzz of a sword could be heard from Fang Yu's body as he slashed at the deity and demon altar. At that instant, the deity and demon altar that was already covered in saber marks and sword marks had another huge, terrifying sword mark. The inexplicable mighty power on the stone tablet also dissipated rapidly at this moment, as if it was in awe of Feng Yu's sword way power. Feng Yu was clear about it. The sharp buzz of a sword came from the supreme sword principle that had been accumulated in Kenshin of Gojoseon's inherited memories. What the hell is this place? Why am I here? Damn it. How can I go back? Feng Yu was a little anxious. Facing the unknown, he felt especially uneasy. However, at that moment the sky and earth were spinning and the stars were moving. Feng Yu's vision turned dark. When he opened his eyes and regained his consciousness, he realized he was at the center of the deity and demon altar. It was the highest point of the altar, the place where one could overlook all of the godlike figures outside the altar. This is the deity and demon altar. It is also the chaotic world outside the ancient region world portal, the final deity and demon world. The ancient voice slowly echoed once again. At this moment, the figure of a man in a moon-white robe, who held a sword in his arms, appeared along with the voice. Lord Kenshin of Gojoseon, 1,200,000 years ago, you rose from the lower realm and ascended to the divine realm. You monopolized the 10 supreme gods and threw the 3 realms into chaos. You were known as the strongest and most monstrous sword god, Venerable Wang. Feng Yu looked at the man walking over and sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. 2 million years ago in the ancient region, there was a man known as the Sword Emperor. He came from the lower realm and killed for revenge. In the end, he swept through the deity realm and became the uncrowned king of the deity realm. In the end, the monstrous Kenshin of Gojoseon inherited the authority of the deity king and became the second deity king in the history of the ancient region. After that, his whereabouts were unknown. Kenshin of Gojoseon was born 2 million years ago. Godslayer was born 1 million years ago. There was only a difference of 200,000 years between the 2 deity kings. As for the first deity king, he lived for 1 million years and died in the ancient region 10 million years ago. In comparison, Kenshin of Gojoseon and Godslayer were both extremely young deity kings of the ancient region who died prematurely. If there was a comparison between Kenshin of Gojoseon and Godslayer, then Kenshin of Gojoseon was definitely more terrifying, mysterious, and monstrous. The authority of the god-slaying sword had changed. Feng Yu had inherited the memories of Kenshin of Gojoseon when he fought in the ancient region. In these memories, Feng Yu did not find out the whereabouts of Kenshin of Gojoseon. This caused Feng Yu to think that Kenshin of Gojoseon had died. Who would have thought Feng Yu actually encountered the Kenshin of Gojoseon in this strange god-fiend altar? The monstrous Kenshin of Gojoseon who was still alive. This is the ancient god-fiend altar. This is the most ancient and only source world in the universe. The beings born here are not living beings. Instead, they are postnatal gods, innate gods, primal chaos gods. Kenshin of Gojoseon did not care about Feng Yu's shock and astonishment. He sat down cross-legged and slowly told Feng Yu about the god-fiend altar. He did not care about how much of a shock and impact his words had on Feng Yu, who had not even stepped into the martial god realm. Chapter 1005. This primal chaos origin world is superior to all great worlds. A great world is a high-grade world like the 3 realms of the ancient realm. There is only one primal chaos origin world in the entire universe. There are a total of 10 great worlds like the ancient realm. However, a great world can only give birth to 9 supreme gods at most, which is equivalent to a divine venerate, as well as a god throne of the same era as a divine being. Kenshin of Gojoseon explained slowly. Fang Yu was a little confused, but he didn't dare to ask anything as he stood in the middle of the God-fiend altar. At this moment, behind Kenshin of Gojoseon, in the center of the ancient God-fiend altar, figures slowly walked out from the thick darkness. Without exception, the auras of these figures were exactly the same as the Sword God Emperor. They all possessed the authority of the God Emperor and were existences at the level of the King of Gods. They were all godly monarchs. In short, they are the God-fiend experts of the primal chaos origin world. They are the arch-enemies of great worlds like us. What the Sword God King wants is for you to grow faster in the primeval domain, so that you can inherit the authority of the God-Slayer King and help us. A white-clothed figure appeared behind Fang Yu. He smiled and walked to Fang Yu's side, patted Fang Yu's shoulder affectionately, and introduced himself. Kid, I hope Kenshin of Gojoseon didn't scare you. I am the white-clothed supreme god of the great world adjacent to the ancient realm, Kong Tae-woo of the ruins of gods. After saying that, the white-clothed supreme god smiled and looked at Kenshin of Gojoseon, who was sitting cross-legged in front of him. This Kenshin of Gojoseon came from the ancient realm 2 million years ago. He killed a primal chaos godfiend, 10 innate godfiends, and over 100 acquired godfiends. He is a ruthless character. According to Kenshin of Gojoseon's previous description, acquired godfiends were equivalent to true gods of the monarch god realm. Innate gods, on the other hand, were equivalent to the ultimate god level. As for the primal chaos godfiends, they were terrifying godfiends that could fight against godly monarchs in the primal chaos origin world. What does this have to do with me? Fang Yu spoke with difficulty. He still didn't understand the situation in front of him, and why the name of this godfiend altar sounded so familiar. The white-cloaked God King continued to explain and answer Fang Yu's questions. A million years ago, godly monarchs, a god-slayer of godly monarchs world. This god-slayer had a screw loose. Back then, when I set foot in the ancient realm, I tried to persuade him to join us. In the end, I inexplicably fought with him. In the end, he was plagued by heart demons and passed away in the god realm. This is also the reason why godly monarchs have not been born in the ancient realm for over 1 million years. You must take over the Godslayer's authority as soon as possible and become the new Godfiend monarchs. Only then will our 10 Directions Great Worlds have enough confidence to counterattack the primal chaos origin world. As the white-clothed Supreme God King spoke, more and more godly monarchs appeared in the darkness. There were actually over 100 of them. Clearly, these godly monarchs were the foundation that the 10 Directions Great Worlds had accumulated over a long period of time. The primal chaos origin world was unique, and it stood on the opposite side of the 10 Directions Great Worlds. Only by devouring the great worlds and the living beings within them could they continue to expand. This also caused the Godfiend system to oppose the godly spirit system. In this endless period of time, 100,000 Godfiends had continuously attacked great worlds and slaughtered their living beings, helping the primal chaos origin world to devour great worlds and strengthen it. Originally, when the 10 Directions Great Worlds were born, there were 10 great worlds: Ancient Realm, Heavenly Realm, Deity Realm, Saint Realm, Nether Realm, Spirit Realm, Monarch Realm, and Mystic Realm. Currently, there were only 6 of the 10 Directions major worlds left. Among them, the Deity Realm was devoured by the primal chaos origin world and turned into a godly ruin where all living beings were extinct. The Nether Realm became the Nether Sea of the primal chaos origin world, the Monarch Realm became a ruined burial ground, and the Monarch Realm became the ghost death prison. After these great worlds were devoured by the primal chaos origin world, all living beings were extinct and turned into a land of death. In the ancient realm, other than the mortal realm, celestial realm, and divine realm, there are many other lesser realms attached to it. Once the primal chaos origin world is breached by the godfiends, the ancient realm will be finished, and all living beings will die. Although I don't know how you obtain the qualifications to step into the godfiend altar before stepping into the godfiend realm, you must quickly inherit the Godslayer's authority. Kenshin of Gojoseon said slowly. But at this moment, Fang Yu stared at Kenshin of Gojoseon and recalled something. In Kenshin of Gojoseon's memories, Fang Yu saw a secret. That was Kenshin of Gojoseon, suspected to be the previous host of the system. This was also the reason why Fang Yu believed that Kenshin of Gojoseon had already fallen. The system cannot have two hosts. Now that the system was in his body, Fang Yu was very concerned about whether Kenshin of Gojoseon had a second super slaughter system. Senior Kenshin of Gojoseon, you and I have a relationship. I wonder if the system you used before is the super slaughter system in my body? Fang Yu probed. Boom. In an instant, the ancient god-fiend altar trembled. It was as if Fang Yu had said an extremely shocking secret. Even the ancient godfiend altar, that could withstand the godfiends of the primal chaos origin world, couldn't withstand the name of the system. Bang! Black and white energy circulated. The entire world froze. Even though the godfiends of the primal chaos origin world were all gathered in the ancient godfiend altar, they were still frozen in place without realizing it. Time froze at this moment. The only one who could still move normally was Fang Yu. At this moment, Fang Yu suddenly realized why the name Ancient Godfiend Altar was so familiar. Previously, when Fang Yu opened 15 treasure chests in a row, it was Fang Yu who opened them. 3 silver treasure chests, 12 bronze treasure chests, 15 treasure chests had opened the 5 elements elixir, 3 martial god realm celestial bodies, and 7 uses of the godfiend altar. The 3 martial god realm celestial bodies had been exchanged for thunder, blizzard, and a quiet wind, 3 high-ranked martial god realm warriors to protect Fang Yu. The 5 elements elixir, together with the Emperor Realm Life and Death Elixir, had sent Fang Yu into the Emperor Realm. As for the 7 uses of the Godfiend Altar, although the name sounded intimidating, it wasn't a tool. There was no description of how to use it or what effect it had. Therefore, Fang Yu had never studied it. Chapter 1006. At this moment, Fang Yu opened the system space to look for the 7 uses of the mythical altar. Only then did he realize that he had already used it 3 times. Now, there were only 4 uses left for the mythical altar. The god-slaying sword devoured Shinmyozen's law of death, and the godly king authority reacted. At that time I felt like I was wandering in the darkness. In that case, does going back and forth count as 2 chances? Then, my soul was knocked out by the ghost sword god, and I unknowingly used the mythical altar for the 3rd time to descend? Fang Yu thought for a while and retracted his gaze from the system space. He began to slowly size up the mythical altar, where time had stopped. He carefully looked at it. The mythical altar, which was hundreds of thousands of feet tall, was imprisoned inside and out by the black and white aura. 107 God-King-level existences had all fallen into a state of imprisonment. It wasn't just the mythical altar. Even the chaotic world outside the God-Fiend altar fell into a standstill under the confinement of the black and white aura. Outside the mythical altar, in the chaotic world, there were a total of 100,000 mythical gods and demons who stood upright, frozen in place. Does this have anything to do with me? I didn't do anything just now. I just wanted to ask if Kenshin of Gojoseon used the super slaughter system back then. Fang Yu's eyes flickered, and a look of astonishment appeared in his eyes. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but when he mentioned the super slaughter system, the mythical altar under his feet seemed to have broken free from the shackles of time and trembled a little. The mythical altar had existed since the creation of the myriad world. It could be said that it was as old as the origin chaos world. Why would such an ancient mythical altar fear the existence of the system? Could it be that the system's level is even higher than the origin chaos world and the 10 directions great worlds? Fang Yu pondered even more. At this moment, Fang Yu unexpectedly tapped his finger on the space on the system interface. Coincidentally, he tapped on the number of times the mythical altar could be used. In an instant, the godly devil altar trembled as if it couldn't wait any longer and wanted to send Fang Yu back to his body in the ancient realm. Boom! A mighty force enveloped Fang Yu's soul. In the blink of an eye, Fang Yu's figure vanished from the altar. All that was left were the God Kings present. They stared at one another as shock filled their faces. Where did that kid run off to? Did he go back? How is this possible? All 107 of us were present, but none of us noticed how he left. Luo Ruoxin exclaimed in shock. How is this possible? With the white-clothed Divine King as their leader, the Divine Thrones were all dumbfounded, unable to speak for a long time. Only Kenshin of Gojoseon remained in place, frowning as he pondered. Before Fang Yu disappeared, he seemed to be asking him something. What was he asking me about? Damn it! Why can't I remember? I clearly felt that this was something extremely important, so why did I, a God King, have no choice but to forget about it? Kenshin of Gojoseon's brows were tightly furrowed. As a freakishly talented God King, one of the most powerful God Kings in the world, this was the first time he felt so powerless. He had clearly forgotten something extremely important. Fang Yu had wanted to remind him, but he had been affected by a power that surpassed the God King realm. Above the God King realm, is it the God realm? The Netherworld. Just as the ghost sword god grabbed Fang Yu's head and lifted Fang Yu's body in an attempt to extract Kenshin of Gojoseon's memories. Boom! Violent winds wreaked havoc like a dragon. At this moment, an incomparably heavy aura descended upon the Netherworld. Apart from Fang Yu, another uninvited guest had arrived at the ghost prison. Furthermore, his strength was far more powerful than Fang Yu's. In fact, he was even more powerful than the underworld blade deity. Ah! Ghost Sword God! Long time no see. Now that the god-slaying sword bears the power of the God King and is about to be completed, even you can't sit still anymore? The newcomer laughed heartily, his eyes filled with coldness. Clearly, he was also here for the God King's power that the god-slaying sword bore. If the ghost sword god was also here for this, then there would be a conflict of interest between them. When the time came, there would definitely be a battle. Ha! The ghost sword god's face was haggard, and his body was as thin as a bamboo pole. At this moment, he was also staring coldly at the uninvited guest, not even bothering to refine Fang Yu's soul. Han Xin was wondering who it was. One of the 9 great gods, infernal deity. Now, he's one of the top 3 overlords in the human world, one of the 2 supreme rulers of the Templar Hall. The ghost sword god laughed coldly. Although his eyes were filled with fear, his words were full of mockery, as if the infernal deity in front of him was some kind of clown. Boom! Elsewhere in the Netherworld, another place was also bombarded, and the stable void shattered with a loud bang. After Fang Yu and the infernal deity, the 3rd uninvited guest arrived in an even more arrogant manner. Ha 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 ha! Yi Wangzuan, you're wrong. The 2 of us are ranked last among the 9 great gods. When have you ever seen the 2 of us act alone? The 2 of us have always been of the same breath and branch, and we're bound together for good or ill. We act together. The 2 of us are very interested in inheriting the authority of the God-Slayer. Why don't you bear the pain and leave? This new uninvited guest stood in the sky, and behind him, there seemed to be an endless sea of corpses churning. It was the other strongest ancestor of the Templar Hall who was as famous as the infernal deity, and also one of the 9 great gods of the past, Sanguinati. Good! Very good indeed. Now, Hanshin is like a tiger that's fallen from its lair, being bullied by dogs. Since when did you 2 supreme gods dare to bare your fangs and brandish your claws in front of a quasi-god king like me? Have you lost your respect? The ghost sword god slowly walked over, revealing a sinister smile. His eyes were filled with the flames of fury and murderous intent. When he was at his peak, among the 9 great gods, Yi Wangzuan was ranked first, stepping on the sun god and moon god, the 2 strongest gods of Haoyang and Hanyue. However, 1,200,000 years had passed. Infernal deity and Sanguinati, these low-level ultimate gods, actually dared to challenge him. It made the ghost sword god so angry that he laughed and burned with anger. The ghost sword god was such a proud person. In Kenshin of Gojoseon's memory, he would feel extremely angry if he was just a nobody. Moreover, at this moment, he was offended by 2 low-level ultimate gods that he looked down on. Chapter 1007. In the Netherworld, the 2 ancestors of the Templar Church had arrived and were ready to fight against the ghost sword god. At this moment, Fang Yu had already returned from the God-fiend altar and had awakened. However, Fang Yu silently observed this chaotic scene, a bitter feeling in his heart. He increasingly felt that there was no chance of survival in this situation. The temperamental and extremely terrifying ghost sword god was already very difficult to deal with. Now 2 more of such terrifying existences had appeared. What made Fang Yu feel incredulous was that the 2 ancestors of the Templar Church were actually 2 of the 9 supreme gods of the past. Could it be that the 9 supreme gods who died when the Godslayer destroyed the world of gods are all in the human world, plotting to seize the Godslayer's authority that he lost? The identity of the inheritor of the Godslayers is really not a good job. Now that I think about it, I'm almost going to be an enemy of the entire human world. Fang Yu lamented in his heart. He had just set foot in the 9 realms of the ancient region, and he was already involved in a high-level dispute like the Godslayers in the capital of the Dahan region. Although he had grown very quickly, he was still not as fast as these old powerhouses of the world of gods in the past. Let's fight for the Godslayer's authority. Ghost Sword God, if you can defeat the 2 of us together, we won't be your enemy anymore. Infernal deity and Sanguinati said slowly. At the same time, they finally made their moves. Moreover, they used a terrifying divine ability that could destroy heaven and earth. Boom! The Netherworld was divided into 3 parts by the ghost sword god, infernal deity, and Sanguinati at this moment. In the space where the ghost sword god stood, a towering phantom of a giant saber that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall stood there, ready to slash out at any time to take a life. As for infernal deity and Sanguinati, both of them had a dharma power that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall. These 2 celestial appearances were hundreds of thousands of feet tall, and were surrounded by a murderous blood chi and evil hell demonic chi. At this moment, they collided fiercely against the giant saber shadow. Is this the battle between the real giants of the martial god realm in the 9 realms of the human world? This is truly beyond the imagination of ordinary people. The ancestor is actually so powerful. Facing the combined suppression of 2 9-star martial gods from the Saint Hall, he is not at a disadvantage at all. The 12 Shura law protectors were all stunned at this moment. They stared blankly at the terrifying battle in front of them. They didn't notice that Fang Yu was secretly trying to escape. How can I win against such a high-level battle? If I don't take advantage of this moment to leave, I will definitely die if I continue to stay. Fang Yu's figure was as fast as a stream of light. He used the system to hide his cultivation aura and rushed toward the three martial god realm generals, who were seriously injured and unconscious at the fastest speed. After putting a quiet wind, blizzard, and thunder back into the system space, Fang Yu's body turned into a long rainbow. He wanted to tear apart this chaotic battlefield and forcefully escape. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. In the land of the Ghost Prison sect, the large formation that had sacrificed all the disciples and elders of the Ghost Prison Emperor realm and below erupted with an incomparably bright light at this moment. This light shot into the sky like a pillar, straight into the clouds. It was hundreds of thousands of feet tall, as if it was going to pierce through the netherworld. Within this pillar of light that shot into the sky were numerous crystals that flickered like stars, and they emitted the radiance of divinity as they surged out. This change forcefully interrupted the battle between Ghost Sword God, Infernal Deity, and Sanguinati. They all looked at the ancient divine crystal in astonishment. The ancient divine crystal has finally appeared. It was not a waste for Han Xin to secretly send his son to the Xianfeng domain to build the ghost prison to guard this place where the ancient divine crystal is sealed. Ghost Sword God's eyes lit up. At this moment, he didn't even care about killing Infernal Deity and Sanguinati. His withered body was as fast as lightning. He took the lead and went straight toward the divine crystal in the pillar of light that shot into the sky. Within the pillar of light, there were god crystals that shone like stars. If one counted them carefully, there were a total of 9 of them. Ghost Sword God, who was attacking, waved his hand and wanted to take all 9 divine crystal for himself. This made Infernal Deity and Sanguinati extremely angry. "Old bastard! Stop right there!" The birth of every divine crystal is the result of the fall of an expert at the 3rd level of the divine spirit realm. These 9 divine crystals are all top-grade divine crystals. They were clearly formed 1,000,000 years ago when the god realm was destroyed, and we, the 9 great gods, fell from the sky. You old bastard who died 2 million years ago, your divine crystal was refined by Godslayer. Now, in order to return to the peak, you're eyeing the 9 divine crystal formed from our fall. Infernal Deity and Sanguinati roared furiously. Boom! At this moment, the netherworld prisons heaven and earth were completely fragmented. The 3 overlords of the divine world in the past were fighting with real fire. Fang Yu, who had wanted to escape, looked at the ancient divine crystal and couldn't help but stop in his tracks. Divine crystal was also divided into different grades. Every divine crystal represented the fall of a divine spirit. Divine crystal formed from the 1st stage divine spirit, divine envoys, was a divine crystal of this grade. It was full of flaws and could remain in the world for no more than 10,000 years. Divine crystal formed from a sovereign god in the 2nd stage divine spirit was a top-grade divine crystal that could remain in the world for millions of years. The 9 divine crystal in front of Fang Yu were transparent and flawless, emitting a dazzling divine radiance like the stars. It was obvious that they were top-grade divine crystal formed from the fall of a supreme god in the 3rd stage divine spirit. Divine crystal of this grade, even if the world was destroyed, the divine crystal wouldn't be destroyed. Perhaps even in the entire ancient realm, there wouldn't be more than 10 top-grade divine crystal of this grade. I have to think of a way to take the risk. Fang Yu gritted his teeth. Facing the 3 giants of the god realm in the past, although he felt his heart tremble, he still had some confidence that he could rely on. The mythical altar. In the ghost prison, Fang Yu was just an ant. He didn't have the qualifications to interfere in the battle between the 3 giants. However, he, Fang Yu, could step into the mythical altar, the fortress of the divine spirit system outside the ancient realm. Fang Yu's cultivation base was merely in the monarch realm. Indeed, he couldn't do anything to the 3 martial gods in the mortal world. However, the godly devil altar was filled with divine thrones with the authority of deity kings. Any one of them would be able to blast these so-called three supreme gods into smithereens even if they were in their peak state. If he wanted to fight for the 9 top-grade divine crystal, Fang Yu had to go to the mythical altar again and borrow the power of the divine kings. Even a trace of the power of a divine king would be enough. Chapter 1008. Advance and live. Retreat and die. The God realm has fallen and the heaven realm has been sealed. The top resources in the human realm are all controlled by the 12 martial god. After 1,000,000 years, I'm afraid the top resources in the human realm have been digested by the 12 martial gods. The divine crystal is definitely the key for me to break through the martial god realm and even the divine spirit realm. I can't let this opportunity go. At this moment, Fang Yu was determined. The human realm's waters were too deep. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, the master of the heaven realm had closed the path from the heaven realm to the human realm and sealed the heaven realm. This had a lot to do with the supreme gods who had fallen in the 9 regions of the human realm. Hao Yang and Hanyue gods, the great demon god's remnant soul, Shinmiozan, Man Kuangzuan, Yi Wangzuan, infernal deity, Sanguinati counting carefully in the past 1,000,000 years, out of the 10 supreme gods that had been born in the 3 realms of the ancient region, 8 had appeared before Fang Yu's eyes. At this moment, while the 3 martial gods were fighting for the divine crystal, Fang Yu's figure whistled through the broken the netherworld, looking for a safe place where he could go to the divine devil altar. Soon, in the ghost prison's sect, the sealed hall entered Fang Yu's eyes. It could be said that this was the only place that was not affected by the aftermath of the battle between the 3 magnates. The 12th guardian Shura was also here. He was standing outside the sealed main hall. As for inside the sealed main hall, there were 9 other martial emperors' auras. Good boy, you have some skills. You can wake up so quickly under the attack of our old ancestor. Stop! Boy, don't blame us for being rude if you come any closer. The 12th guardian Shura stared coldly at Fang Yu and kept scolding him. However, Fang Yu didn't care about this at all. With a flip of his hand, a scarlet flame rose and swept in all directions. The incomparably sharp scarlet flame divine sword appeared in his hand. There are 9 martial emperors in this hall. They must be the last higher-ups of the ghost prison. Fang Yu's eyes flashed. Only now did he remember that he had set foot in the ghost prison to destroy the ghost prison and complete the map quest. Choose any of the 5 great sects in the northern part of the profound wind domain and wipe them out. Fang Yu chose ghost prison. It was a pity. He came at a bad time. He did not encounter a single expert from the ghost prison. Instead, he killed the elder of the Ghost Palace and encountered the 12 protectors of the Ghost Palace, Shura, and the Grand Ancestor, the Ghost Sword God. As a result, Fang Yu was unable to complete the map mission, which he could have easily completed, until now. In the hall, there were still 9 martial emperors alive in the ghost prison. This gave Fang Yu some hope of completing the map quest. If he completed the map quest and obtained the supreme treasure chest, he might not even need to go to the Fiend God altar to obtain the means to fight against the 3 martial gods. 3 silver treasure chests, 3 high-grade martial gods, a quiet wind general, blizzard general, and thunder general. A transcendent grade treasure chest was above a golden treasure chest, and its miraculous effects were absolutely extraordinary. Get out of the way! Or die. Fang Yu was wearing the Scarlet Flame Divine armor and holding the Scarlet Flame Divine sword. His whole body seemed to be bathed in divine flames. He was like a terrifying divine general descending from the 9th heaven. If it were any other situation, with such a majestic and imposing aura, Fang Yu might really be able to intimidate the 12 Shura guardians. However, Fang Yu's cultivation was only at the martial emperor realm. The 12 Shura guardians had fought against Fang Yu before, so they knew better than anyone. At this moment, They were not afraid of Fang Yu at all. Boom! Outside the hall, the 12 Shura guardians' terrifying demonic aura skyrocketed. In an instant, the 12 towering Shura evil spirit Dharma phantoms appeared again and trapped Fang Yu. Kill us? Just now, it was the old ancestor who saved you. Otherwise, how could a puny martial emperor like you survive under the hands of the 12 Shura guardians? Do you really think you're a character? I refuse to believe that the divine might of the way of the sword that you can display is really enough to slay us 12 Azura protectors. One of the Shura guardians sneered, his face full of doubt towards Fang Yu. At this moment, Fang Yu drew his sword. Ghost Sword God, you saved me just now? Don't joke around. It's easy for me to kill you 12 Azura sovereigns with one strike. Senior Netherworld Saber God, it's for your own good that I didn't let you block my sword. In the end, you 12 emperors didn't realize it. Fang Yu's cold voice fell. In an instant, the scarlet flame divine sword was full of monstrous, sharp light. It was terrifying to the extreme, as if a terrifying sword that could destroy heaven and earth appeared again. Good. The old ancestor said that we 12 emperors don't deserve to kill you, and we don't deserve to fight against this sword. Today we will attack and prove that the old ancestor was wrong. Kid, you're just an ant. We 12 emperors can easily destroy your sword Dao and take your life. 12 Shura evil spirits kill. At this moment, the 12 Shura evil spirits leaped up at the same time. Wrapped in the power of heaven and earth, they fiercely pounced towards the sword that could destroy heaven and earth, as if they wanted to tear this sword into pieces. In the distance, infernal deity, sanguinati, and ghost sword god, who were fighting fiercely for the divine crystal, all stopped slightly and looked towards the main hall. What a pity! Old ghost, I'm afraid that the 12 Shura emperors that you've carefully cultivated will not be able to transform into the 12 Shura gods. Controlling the Dharma idol of the Shura evil spirits to take the initiative to kill the terrifying sword Dao that was inherited from the Kenshin of Gojoseon. It's ridiculous to the extreme. It's almost equivalent to suicide. Infernal deity and sanguinati shook their heads and sighed. On the side, Ghost Sword God shook his head and sighed. His face was full of disappointment and pity for the 12 Shura guardians. Hanshin said, "They don't deserve to be this kid's opponent. They don't deserve to compete with the sword Dao of the Kenshin of Gojoseon that could destroy heaven and earth. But the 12 emperors are arrogant and don't believe it at all. It's a pity that Hanshin will have to find new candidates for the 12 Shura gods in the future." After he finished speaking, Ghost Sword God, Infernal Deity, and Sanguinati once again fell into a fierce battle. The 9 top-grade divine crystal shone brightly. At the same time, in the depths of the Mystic Essence mountain range, another uninvited guest arrived at the mountain gate of the 5 great sects. He looked old, wore a linen robe, and carried a sword on his back. He had an otherworldly temperament. The Jian clan, Kanzu Jian Tianhen. Chapter 1009. The Jian clan, Kanzu Jian Tianhen. In the human realm, he was known as the terrifying existence closest to the gods. Even Xian Jian Valkyrie and the 3 supreme martial gods from 100,000 years ago paled in comparison to him. Ever since the god realm was destroyed, Kanzu Jian Tianhen had appeared and swept through the world. No one was his match. In the eyes of the 12 overlords, Jian Tianhen was terrifyingly strong. He was the cultivator closest to the 3rd stage of the divine spirit realm. However, in the eyes of Ghost Sword God, Infernal Deity, Sanguinati, and even Han Yue and Haoyang, Kanzu Jian Tianhen was a genuine 1st stage of the divine spirit realm expert. A 1st stage of the divine spirit realm body refiner. A 1st stage of the divine spirit realm body refiner was rarely seen in the entire ancient region 3 realms. Only a peak body refiner like Man Kuangzuan, who had stepped into the supreme god realm, could create such a body refiner. Therefore, Kanzu Jian Tianhen was actually an old acquaintance, Man Kuangzuan, Ghost Sword God, and the others knew this. When Jian Tianhen's aura appeared in the 5 great sects, Ghost Sword God, Infernal Deity, and Sanguinati all stopped fighting. Separated by the barrier between heaven and earth, they looked at each other from afar. Their eyes were filled with fear. No matter how strong they were at their peak, no matter how much they suppressed the other supreme gods, they couldn't display much of the divine might they had in the past. In front of Man Kuangzuan, a divine spirit realm body refiner, they, who were only martial gods, were naturally inferior. You can divide the 9 divine crystal among yourselves. This old man has no objections. However, I will be taking away the successor of the God Slayer. In the Ghost Prison Mountain Gate, the Sword Ancestor spoke slowly. His voice was filled with an unquestionable dignity. Boom! The next moment, Kanzu appeared out of nowhere and interfered with the battle between Infernal Deity, Sanguinati, and even the Ghost Sword God. At that instant, the 3 martial gods went flying like kites with their strings cut. As soon as the godly spirit realm body refinement warrior showed up, his strength was overwhelming. He easily suppressed the 3 martial god realm magnates. At this moment, Kanzu Jian Tianhen was just like the Ghost Sword God from before. He easily injured Fang Yu's 3 generals as if he was cutting vegetables and melons. In the main hall, Fang Yu had slain all 12 Shura avatars with a single strike. The 12 Shura protectors of the Ghost Palace were half kneeling on the ground. Blood was flowing out of their 7 orifices, and their vitality was fading away. The 12 Shura's Dharma bodies were bonded with the lives of the 12 protector sovereigns. It could be said that Fang Yu had slain all 12 Shura's Dharma bodies with a single strike. That was equivalent to killing the 12 protectors. It's so powerful! That strike has reached the peak of perfection. It has surpassed most of the sword gods in the human world. It's not an injustice for us to be defeated by that strike. After saying those words, the 12 Azura protectors sprayed out a mouthful of blood. A line of blood appeared between their eyebrows. Then, the line of blood flowed down from the center of their eyebrows. Their bodies were chopped in half. At this moment, Kanzu Jian Tianhen, who had just arrived, saw the scene. A hint of gloominess appeared in his eyes. What's wrong with this kid? How did he grow so fast? First, he obtained the mark of God's slaughter. Then, he stirred up the heavenly palace relic and defeated Hao Yang deity. Then, he obtained the 2nd fragment of the God's slaughter sword from Shinmyozan. He even obtained 3 high-grade martial god realm avatars for no apparent reason. Before this old man could finish digesting this news, this kid obtained the inheritance of the Sword God King, allowing the Xianjian martial god to break free from my control. Is he like Kenshin of Gojoseon and Godslayer in the past? Jian Tianhen looked gloomy. He vaguely felt that this kid from the lower world had grown too fast and was somewhat out of his control. Originally, even though Fang Yu was the inheritor of the god's slaughter sword, he, the Kanzu, had not taken him seriously. He had only treated him as a pawn to temporarily control the fragment of the god's slaughter sword. From the beginning to the end, Kanzu had been watching Fang Yu. A few months ago, including Fang Yu, a total of 10 cultivators from the lower world had arrived at the northern part of the Xianfeng domain. At that time, Jian Tianhen, the strongest patriarch of the Jian clan, had been awakened. After all, the Xianfeng domain was Kanzu's territory. Even the slightest movement of leaves in the wind could not be hidden from him. Among this group of cultivators from the lower world, 2 of them had caused him great uneasiness. One of them had 2 souls in one body. One was the soul of a martial emperor from the lower world, and the other was only the soul of a martial venerable. However, there was an ancient golden bell in his body. This ancient golden bell was called the Xianming bell. It was a unique supreme treasure that could only be born in the lower world. The reason why this person with two souls in one body could cause Jian Tianhen, a divine spirit realm body refinement warrior, to feel uneasy was because of this supreme treasure. Kanzu quickly restrained this person and sealed him in the invincible abyss of the Jian clan. He searched day and night for the method to extract the supreme treasure. As for the second person who caused Kanzu to feel uneasy, it was Fang Yu in front of him. This person did not have any supreme treasure in his body. However, in Jian Tianhen's eyes, this person was far more important than Martial Emperor Lin Tianwu, Xian Mingzun, and the supreme treasure. This was because this person's fate was too strange. In Jian Tianhen's memory, he had only seen two people with such strange fate. In the end, both of them had obtained the authority of the King of Gods, Kenshin of Gojoseon, and God-Slayer. Kid, come with me. You have the King of Godslayer's inheritance, and the Sword God King's supreme mastery of the Sword Dao. I want both. Kanzu Jian Tianhen's eyes were fierce. He walked toward Fang Yu step by step. His domineering aura suppressed the heavens and the earth, causing Fang Yu to be unable to move an inch. Although this was the first time Fang Yu had met the strongest patriarch of the Jian clan, Fang Yu still recognized this person's identity. He was the supreme ruler of the Xianfeng domain. At the same time, he was also the master of the Jian clan. Not long ago, the man had even ordered the martial god realm progenitors of the Jian clan to search for him. Fang Yu had met Xianjian Valkyrie at that time. All right. I'll go with you. Fang Yu looked as if he had accepted his fate. Instantly, Infernal Deity and Sanguinati's expressions changed. Both of them were supreme gods who had coveted the authority of the King of Gods. How dare you? Man Kuangzuan, aren't you a little too greedy? You're eating meat and your mouth is dripping with oil. Do you want me to stand aside and watch? Isn't your way of thinking a little too laughable? Now that the authority of the King of Gods has materialized, whoever gathers the complete god-slaying sword can become the new god-slayer. You can't take this kid with you, Infernal Deity and Sanguinati said furiously. Chapter 10:10. The Sanguinati and the Infernal Deity made their moves one after another, summoning a terrifying phantom of a god to block Jian Tianhen's path. To the side, the ghost sword god's withered body also leaped over a distance of 10,000 feet with a single leap. A huge blade rose from his body as he stared coldly at Jian Tianhen. Man Kuangzuan, you can't take this kid away. Han Xin hasn't gone through Kenshin of Gojoseon's memories yet. Today, even if Godslayer comes back to life, he won't be able to stop us from taking this kid away. As Fang Yu seemed to have accepted his fate and was planning to leave with Man Kuangzuan, the three gods immediately stood in front of Jian Tianhen to block his path. At this very moment, the three gods, who had been fighting to the death for the 9 divine crystals, didn't even look at the divine crystal. They were all focused on Jian Tianhen. Jian Tianhen could faintly feel the veins on his forehead bulging. He was faintly unable to suppress the irritation in his heart. In order to keep the 3 supreme gods in check, he had deliberately given up all 9 divine crystals, including the divine crystal formed from his fallen body. That wasn't all. He had deliberately revealed his strength to suppress the 3 gods and intimidate them into not acting rashly. All so that he could safely take Fang Yu away. But who would have thought that he still couldn't avoid such a situation? That's why this old man hates everything that's out of control. 1,200,000 years ago, Kenshin of Gojoseon was the variable that caused the ancients' region to go out of control. 1,000,000 years ago, Godslayer, that damned kid, was the same. Even more so. This old man has become a saint through body refinement. I can be reborn from a drop of blood and regrow limbs. I'm almost immortal. But I just had to run into variables like you. My plans were disrupted time and time again, turning into a complete mess. Jian Tianhen lost his composure. He looked at Fang Yu, who had escaped from his control, with an extremely cold expression. Very few people knew. 1,200,000 years ago, the leader of the 10 strongest gods wasn't Yi Wangzuan, but Wang Zun himself. Before the rise of Kenshin of Gojoseon, there were actually 2 half-step Wang Zun existences in the god realm who had the chance to touch the God King's authority. Kenshin of Gojoseon, Gojoseon of Gojoseon, War of Gojoseon, War of Gojoseon, of Gojoseon, of Gojoseon, of Gojoseon, Gojoseon of Gojoseph. However, he was still able to firmly hold onto the title of Wang Zun, at the level of a quasi-god king. And the person who had lost Wang Zun's strength and his qualifications as a quasi-god king was Wang Zun. He had concealed Wang Zun's strength for many years, all so that he could give Yi Wangzuan a fatal blow when he truly fought for the authority of the divine king in the end. The day of the 2 kings fighting for the throne had yet to come. The Kenshin of Gojoseon had risen from the lower realms, and for the sake of revenge, he had thrown the 3 realms into chaos, turning the entire ancient region into a state of chaos. Above the supreme gods and below the authority of the king of gods, there could only be 2 Wang Zun in the ancient domain. Kenshin of Gojoseon had risen from the lower realm and thrown the 3 realms into chaos. With his talent, it was only natural that someone in the god realm would lose their authority. He, the man Wang Zun, had never appeared in the world. Then, he silently lost his authority and became the real man Quangzuan. 1,000,000 years ago, when Godslayer had risen, the same thing had happened. He had lived in seclusion for 200,000 years, and had only just recovered his position as Wang Zun. He had not even touched the authority of the King of Gods. Godslayer had risen. Once the authority of the King of Gods was born, all of Wang Zun's positions would disappear. He had once again become the man Quangzuan. Today, no one can save you. In order to prevent the 2 tragedies of the past from happening again, I will take the God Slayer fragment and Kenshin of Gojoseon's memories from your body, and destroy your soul. Jian Tianhen said coldly, his face filled with killing intent. Boom. At that instant, Jian Tianhen stepped forward toward the 3 martial gods. He curled his finger like a sword, unleashing a terrifying sword intent that could destroy the heavens and earth. Such attainments in the way of the sword, as well as the terrifying aura that could annihilate heaven and earth, were almost identical to the Sword God King's attainments in the way of the sword that Fang Yu had inherited. Why do you know Kenshin of Gojoseon's sword art too? Ghost Sword God frowned and asked sinisterly when he saw the bloody cut on his palm. Why do I know it too? Ha! Jian Tianhen burst out laughing. His face was filled with disdain. One of the juniors in my clan obtained a portion of the Sword God King's memory inheritance, by chance. These sword daos were all stolen from him by this old man. Ghost God, what do you think of this sword art? Back then, you perished under this sword. Jian Tianhen laughed maniacally. Ghost Sword God was no match for Jian Tianhen. Infernal Deity and Sanguinati were no match for Jian Tianhen either. As the supreme deities in the past, they naturally had ways to utilize the power above the martial god realm. However, that was their trump card. It was not worth it to use it for Fang Yu. Seeing the 3 divine generals being defeated once again, Fang Yu finally broke free from Jian Tianhen's suppression. He did not hesitate at all. Fang Yu held the crimson flame divine sword tightly in his hand and unleashed a terrifying slash that could destroy the heavens and earth once again. However, the slash was not aimed at where Jian Tianhen was standing. It was aimed at the ghost prison's forbidden hall behind him. May the heavens protect us! Let's get rid of the last great emperors of Nether Prison in one fell swoop. The map task must be completed by me. Otherwise, without that supreme-grade treasure chest, it would be extremely difficult for me to break free from this hopeless situation. Fang Yu's slash was powerful enough to destroy the heavens and earth. Even the 12 Emperor Realm Protectors of the Ghost Prison would not be able to withstand this slash even if they used their strongest technique. Not to mention, in this small Forbidden Hall, as well as in the Ghost Prison, the strongest was only one Emperor Realm Master. The 9 great Emperor Realm Masters. What is he trying to do? Kill us? He must be crazy. We are hiding in this Ghost Prison's Forbidden Hall, and did not provoke him at all. The person who wants to kill him is Sir Kanzu of the Jian clan. Why would he want to kill us? They were sitting at home, but the murderous intent was coming from outside. At this moment, in the Forbidden Hall, the 9 great Emperor Realm Masters were originally watching the shocking battle outside. However, when they saw Fang Yu charging at them with his sword, they were all scared out of their wits. The 12 Shura Protectors of the Ghost Prison could even kill a 9-star Great Emperor Realm Master if they went all out. The 12 Shura Protectors had been turned into wandering ghosts by Fang Yu's sword, let alone these 9 ordinary Great Emperor Realm Masters. Old Ancestor, save us! Accompanied by desperate cries, the Forbidden Hall collapsed with a loud bang and was razed to the ground by a single slash of the sword. The long-awaited system's voice finally sounded in Fang Yu's ears. Congratulations to the host for completing the slaughter treasure chest. You have obtained a supreme-grade treasure chest. Chapter 10-11. As the system's voice rang out, a large treasure chest that was shining with colorful divine light appeared in front of Fang Yu, floating in midair. Map mission, Super Treasure Chest. It's done. It's finally done. Today, whether or not I can safely survive this calamity will depend on whether or not this supreme-grade treasure chest is strong enough. The corners of Fang Yu's mouth curled into a smile, but he could not hide the excitement and nervousness in his heart at this moment. In the sealed hall, in addition to the Ghost Hell Emperor Realm experts, there was also the son of the Ghost Sword God, the Ghost Hell Overlord. Fang Yu's sword had killed all the experts in the Ghost Hell. Unavoidably, this son of the Underworld Saber God was also killed. The son of the Ghost Sword God had been killed by Fang Yu. Regardless of whether he was really angry or for the sake of his so-called reputation, the Ghost Sword God had to make a response and fight back fiercely. In the battlefield, the 3 gods had to work together to barely compete with Jian Tianhen, a body refinement god who walked in the human world. He had offended the strongest of the 3 gods, the Ghost Sword God. Now that the cooperation of the 3 gods had been destroyed, Jian Tianhen would definitely be unstoppable. At that time, if the super treasure chest was not powerful enough, Fang Yu would definitely end up in a miserable state. The treasure that comes out must be a tool. Just like the special cards that came out of the Soaring Cloud world, otherwise I'm dead. System, you don't want me to die, right? Super treasure chest. Open it for me. Fang Yu gritted his teeth, and the hair all over his body stood on end. At this moment, he could even feel the fury from the Ghost Sword God. Immediately, his palm moved quickly and quickly opened the super treasure chest. If he had been a little slower, Fang Yu might have even lost the chance to open the super treasure chest. If a terrifying expert at the peak of the martial god realm wanted to kill a mere Emperor Realm expert, it was simply too easy. In an instant, Fang Yu was enveloped by the 7-colored divine light that only he could see. Then, several things appeared in front of him. At the same time, at this moment, Ghost Sword God, Infernal Deity, Sanguinati, and even Jian Tianhen stopped fighting. This was especially true for Infernal Deity and Sanguinati. The 2 of them stared at the Ghost Prison's main hall, which had been razed to the ground by Fang Yu's sword. They were clearly at a loss for what to do. What was going on? Had Fang Yu lost his mind? The Ghost Sword God was doing his best to stop the Jian clan patriarch for him. In the end, Fang Yu killed the ghost sword god's legitimate son in front of him? One had to know that when the ghost sword god was still Yi Wangzuan, he had wanted to have a son 2 million years ago, but he could not get one. It was not easy for him to obtain a legitimate son like the ghost prison overlord after his divine death. The ghost sword god could be said to have loved him to the extreme. His only legitimate son, the one he doted on very much, died just like that. He even died in front of him, in the hands of Fang Yu. One could imagine how angry the ghost sword god would be, anger that would cause him to lose his mind. Not to mention the two ultimate gods, even the Jian clan patriarch, Jian Tianhen, deliberately avoided the Forbidden Hall when he fought. He was afraid of hurting the ghost prison overlord and angering the ghost sword god. He was afraid that he would form an irreconcilable grudge with the ghost sword god. Fang Yu, on the other hand, was great. He took the initiative to court death. He killed the two ultimate gods and the ghost sword god's legitimate son, who Jian Tianhen did not want to hurt with just one slash. Is he crazy? Even Jian Tianhen was a little dazed at that moment. He still could not understand why Fang Yu killed the nine-ghost prison overlord expert. Even though Jian Tianhen's mind was immersed in scheming all year round, he still couldn't figure out what benefits Fang Yu could gain by doing this. My son is dead? Fang Yu. You bastard, what are you trying to do? How dare you kill Hanshin's only son in front of Hanshin? Are you crazy, or is Hanshin's eyes playing tricks on him? Hanshin is protecting you now. Damn it, bastard. Hanshin will kill you. The ghost sword god was furious as expected. He roared crazily and lost all rationality. He did not even care about sparing Fang Yu's life to read his memories. At that moment, there was only one thought in the mind of the Night Lord of the past. That was to kill Fang Yu and use all kinds of torture on his soul. His body moved like lightning. He covered a distance of 10,000 feet in one step. In the blink of an eye, the ghost sword god had arrived in front of Fang Yu with a huge saber surrounded by ancient runes in his hand. Boom! The ancient saber slashed out fiercely. A terrifying roar exploded in this part of the world, bringing with it endless strange phenomena and terrifying vast divine power. As the blade slashed out, the terrifying figure of a huge blade that was tens of thousands of meters tall and completely solid appeared. It viciously slashed towards Fang Yu. Previously, the ghost sword god did not draw his saber when he was fighting the two ultimate gods. Previously, the ghost sword god did not draw his saber when the three ultimate gods were fighting Jian Tianhen. Now, Fang Yu had killed his only son, the ghost sword god, who had lost his rationality, had drawn his saber. It was obvious how important this son of his was to the ghost sword god. God-slaying saber? Back then, when Sword Wang Zun swept across the heaven realm and was about to enter the divine realm, Yi Wangzuan painstakingly honed the god-slaying saber in order to destroy Sword Wang Zun's swordsmanship. This kid is dead for sure. I'm afraid this saber attack is the most powerful attack Yi Wangzuan can unleash as the ghost sword god. Even Jian Tianhen, who stole part of Kenshin of Gojoseon's swordsmanship as a divine spirit body cultivator, wouldn't dare to take the ghost sword god's crazy saber attack head-on. This kid is dead for sure. No one in the 9 regions can block this attack for him. Sanguinati and infernal deities' expressions changed drastically as they spoke one after another. Not only the 2 ultimate gods, but even the strongest of the 4 ultimate gods, Jian Tianhen, who walked the world as a divine spirit, narrowed his eyes with a hint of fear flashing in his eyes. Faced with this saber attack, Jian Tianhen would not be able to block it. This saber attack could be said to be the strongest attack in the mortal realm. Under this attack, even the 3 ultimate martial gods, who were at their peak 100,000 years ago, would fall and lose all their vitality. I only want the 2 God Slayer fragments in this kid's body. I'm not interested in whether he lives or dies. Ghost Sword God, if you want to take it, go ahead. I won't stop you. Jian Tianhen tactfully did not intervene. Instead, he stood by and watched the scene where Fang Yu was about to fall with a cold smile. Chapter 10-12. This attack was so powerful that no one could block it. Even Jian Tianhen would feel his scalp go numb if he encountered it. After all, his body that was comparable to a divine spirit was only comparable to a first-stage divine spirit. As for the Netherworld Blade God's Peak Slash, it was capable of killing a level 1 divine spirit and injuring a level 2 divine spirit. Fang Yu is dead. Although he no longer has the God Slayer mark, it'll be difficult to inherit the 2 God Slayer fragments in his hands. However, it's just difficult. Jian Tianhen watched this scene with a smile. He wanted to sit back and watch Fang Yu, the 3rd person with a unique birth chart, fall. Unfortunately, at this moment, Fang Yu abruptly raised his head and gave a disdainful smile on his face. He was standing under the towering tens of thousands of feet tall, and the entire body was solid. This disdainful smile was not only directed at the Ghost Sword God but also at Jian Tianhen, Sanguinati, and Infernal Deity. Hee. Perhaps before this, I was just an ant-like creature in front of the 4 of you. You could kill me with a wave of your hand. I could only tremble and think of ways to escape. But it's different now. Right now, you 4 gods are nothing in front of me. I, Fang Yu, can destroy your souls with a wave of my hand. At this moment, Fang Yu's voice was exceptionally cold. It was as if he had become a different person. Boom. The scene shook. Sanguinati, Infernal Deity, and even Jian Tianhen heard Fang Yu's insulting words. They were all enraged. A mere ant actually dared to ignore the strict rules of hierarchy and bark like a dog at the 3 masters of the ancient realm? He was simply courting death. You're about to die, yet you're starting to spout nonsense. This kid doesn't seem to have any great accomplishments. I really don't understand why his fate is so unique. It's comparable to Kenshin of Gojoseon and Godslayer. Jian Tianhen regained his composure and sneered in his heart. He was no longer angry with Fang Yu, only endless mockery. If it wasn't for the fact that this ant from the lower dimensions possessed a unique fate and had gathered 2 God Slaughter fragments, he would probably not even take a second look at this ant from the lower dimensions. Where did all this nonsense come from? Die for Han Xin. The Ghost Sword God swung the ancient saber in his hand downward, and the giant saber that was tens of thousands of feet long also came crashing down with a terrifying pressure. At this moment, the netherworld was torn apart, falling into the endless turbulence of the void. Under this slash, the already fragmented space could no longer hold on and was completely destroyed. It was also at this time. Boom. An awe-inspiring, terrifying, malevolent, murderous aura that was as viscous as blood rose from Fang Yu's body. In the blink of an eye. Above Fang Yu's body, a figure in a white robe with a head of long black and white hair rose. His eyes were cold, and his entire body was filled with blood-red murderous aura. God Slayer. The Ghost Sword God's ferocious face and murderous eyes froze when he saw the figure of the black and white-haired man. I said, "You're all broken dogs. Do you think I'm wrong? Yi Wangzuan, come over here and say something. Did I say something wrong?" Fang Yu spoke slowly. His eyes were ghastly cold, and his entire body was covered in terrifying divine energy that was sticky like blood. This was a power that surpassed all laws and belonged to the Ancients' realm. It was the power of the King of Gods. The power of the Godly King. The power of the Godly King. Boom. As soon as Fang Yu finished speaking, he stretched out his hand. There wasn't the slightest bit of superfluous movement. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed. The fragmented heaven and earth met with a mighty force from the unseen world, and was immediately pieced back together by force. At the same time, in this world that was filled with cracks, the gigantic saber that was tens of thousands of feet tall and was extremely terrifying. It was said to be the strongest saber in the human world, and it was said to be the strongest saber in the human world. At this moment it exploded into pieces. Countless fragments surged forward and collided with the underworld saber god's figure with a mighty force. Not only that, the ancient saber in the ghost sword god's hand that had accompanied him for millions of years also shattered at this moment. No. Spare me! Lord Godslayer, please forgive my sins. I'm willing to repent. I'm willing to never be your enemy or your successor's enemy. I beg you, please spare me this one time. The ghost sword god stood in the sky. At this moment, he was facing Feng Yu, who was like a godslayer. He was scared out of his wits and his guts were about to explode. At this moment, this Yi Wangzuan from the era of Kenshin of Gojoseon was kneeling in the sky like a stray dog on the street. He kept kowtowing to Feng Yu and begging for mercy. He did not care about his reputation at all. In the past, 1,000,000 years ago, Yi Wangzuan had also faced this godslayer. He wanted to snatch back the divine crystal from him and return to the peak status of Wang Zun. At that time, the godslayer had not yet obtained the authority of a divine king. He had not yet become the divine king of the ancients' realm. At that time, the godslayer was only a divine emperor in the second realm of the three realms of the divine spirit realm. At that time, in the heavenly realm, the supreme god Yi Wangzuan ruthlessly attacked the godslayer. He wanted to kill him. In the end, the godslayer only used one sword move. He used his barbaric killing intent to taint the foundation of Yi Wangzuan and knocked him down from the supreme god level to the mortal world. At that time, in order to preserve his life, Yi Wangzuan knelt like a stray dog and begged Godslayer to forgive his sins. Every word and sentence of his begging was exactly the same. This scene was especially laughable in Feng Yu's eyes. Ha ha! Feng Yu laughed coldly. The shadow of the Godslayer on his body reached out a palm and pressed down on the ghost sword god. Didn't you promise me the same thing in the heavenly realm and the nether sea? What happened in the end? Didn't you betray the oath you made? How can I forgive you? Feng Yu's voice was low, cold, and indifferent. It was full of arrogance and condescension. His voice was like thunder, rumbling endlessly. Godslayer, if you don't forgive me, don't blame Hanshin for causing trouble for your successor when he returns in the future. Hanshin doesn't believe that the means you left behind can protect him for all eternity. The ghost sword god screamed in horror. Then, in the next moment, under Feng Yu's surging divine power, the ghost sword god leaped up and tore apart the shattered world. He turned around and tried to escape toward the ancient realm of the human realm. The ghost sword god was so scared that his liver and guts were about to burst. He was also frightened by the Godslayer's aura and didn't dare to attack again. At that moment, he only wanted to escape. Chapter 10:13. At this moment, the ghost sword god was in a state of panic. He kept burning his martial god power and even the power of his soul in order to escape back to the 9 regions of the mortal realm. However, all his struggles were laughable. Do you think you can escape? You are just a lowly god who has kowtowed and begged for mercy twice in front of me. How dare you call yourself Hanshin? This is too laughable! Yi Wangzuan, today you shall perish here. Feng Yu slowly spoke. His voice was as cold as ice and his eyes were cold. There seemed to be some mockery in them as he looked down at the frantically fleeing underworld blade god. Previously, the ghost sword god was high and mighty. He could easily control Feng Yu's life and death. He played with Feng Yu like a cat playing with a mouse. He was temperamental. He had a perverse temperament. This caused Feng Yu to be extremely terrified, and he had no choice but to serve her carefully with a tense heart. But now, in Fang Yu's hands, the insufferably powerful nether blade god had turned into a lowly ant. His life and death were in Fang Yu's hands. At this moment, Fang Yu made his move. Fang Yu stretched out his hand and clenched it hard in the direction of the ghost sword god's escape. Then, in the firmament, a terrifying force suddenly erupted, and the void door was blown to smithereens. Boom! A bloody mist exploded in the sky. A mighty force from the unseen world enveloped the area and ruthlessly pressed down on the netherworld blade god. Then, the ghost sword god's broken body fell from the sky. His soul was destroyed. As the supreme Night Lord of the past, the leader of the 10 supreme gods, the netherworld sword god was now completely dead. There was no chance for him to reincarnate. He was the second supreme god after divine underworld sovereign to have his body and soul completely obliterated and vanish from the ancient region. How is this possible? The ghost sword god has actually fallen. He's Yi Wangzuan of the past, and he's been recuperating for over 1,000,000 years. He didn't participate in the battle against Godslayer back then. Normally speaking, even if it's a true second-stage deity, a peak lord god at the level of a principal god, they shouldn't be able to take away the ghost sword god's life. Not far away, Jian Tianhen, Sanguinati, and infernal deity, who had witnessed everything with their own eyes, all sucked in a breath of cold air. Their scalps went numb, and their eyes were filled with horror. Among them, Jian Tianhen was the most prominent. He was the slaughter god's messenger who possessed the third slaughter god fragment. It could be said that, for the past 1,000,000 years, he had always wanted to obtain Godslayer's authority. He was the person who had the deepest understanding of the Godslayer's sword. However, despite his deep understanding, he knew that the Godslayer's sword only contained the godly king's authority. It didn't have Godslayer's memory inheritance, martial arts inheritance, or the godly king's mighty power that could protect the inheritor. The Godslayer's sword was only an extremely high-grade divine weapon. Its special feature was that it carried the godly king's authority. It didn't have Godslayer's remnant consciousness, godly power, or backup plans. This was the fundamental reason why so many fallen deities in the human world dared to plot against Fang Yu for the Godslayer's sword. However, all of this had been overturned today. Fang Yu had actually borrowed Godslayer's godly king's power from an unknown place. He had easily crushed the ghost sword god into pieces. This was simply unbelievable. This is indeed the real Godslayer's aura. But shouldn't he have fallen? He should have fallen outside the Twilight Temple. 800,000 years ago, before the Heaven Realm was sealed, I went to the Hall of the God Realm and saw Godslayer's corpse from afar. He was haunted by his inner demons, destroyed his soul, and passed away outside the temple. He chose to die, so how could there be a remnant of his soul in this world? Sanguinati and infernal deities screamed in horror. Then, they turned into flowing lights and tried to escape. The king of God slaughterers was too famous. Moreover, in the battle of the God realm 1,000,000 years ago, the trauma that Godslayer had left on these fallen deities was too deep. It hadn't dissipated even now. At this moment, Sanguinati and infernal deity even suspected that Fang Yu was the reincarnation of Godslayer. Otherwise, where did he get Godslayer's godly power? Don't be fooled by him. The king of Godslayers is dead. Moreover, the godly king's authority is empty. How could he possibly reincarnate? Fang Yu must be using some other method to set up a trap. He wants to scare us into running away. Everyone, attack with me. Kill Fang Yu. His power can't last long, and it's not Godslayer's godly power at all. Jian Tianhen stood up at this moment, raised his arms and shouted, encouraging Sanguinati and infernal deity to join forces with him. However, Godslayer had destroyed their souls 1,000,000 years ago, and they hadn't recovered yet. Moreover, Ghost Sword God was easily killed by Feng Yu, who was covered in Godslayer's godly power, even when he was at the peak of his power. Sanguinati and Infernal Deity didn't dare to stay there, let alone fight with Feng Yu who had Godslayer's godly power. Join forces with you? Haha. Savage supremacy, you want us to die with you, don't you? F*CKU, if you want to die, stay and die yourself. Don't try to drag us with you. The two godly gods scolded ferociously and tore through the void without looking back, rolling and crawling away. To this, Feng Yu didn't stop them. Jian Tianhen's face darkened when he saw the two godly gods running away. However, he didn't follow them and stayed in this world instead. You didn't stop the two godly gods from leaving. You're just a paper tiger. Let's see who can outlast the other here. Jian Tianhen stared coldly at Feng Yu and distanced himself from Feng Yu. He had made up his mind to fight to the death with Feng Yu. The temptation of the two godly slayer sword fragments was too great. It was so great that Jian Tianhen didn't want to miss this opportunity even if he had to risk his life. As long as he took away Feng Yu's godly slayer mark and the two godly slayer sword fragments, the fourth godly slayer sword fragment would automatically come to him. When that time came, he would be able to inherit the godly king's authority. With his body as a first-level divine spirit body refiner, even if he wasn't at the supreme god realm, as long as he refined this god-slayer authority, he would be able to become the king of gods that was above all third-level divine spirit. The authority left behind by Godslayer was extremely special. No matter who it was, as long as they were above the martial god realm and refined the complete godly slayer sword, they would be able to inherit everything and become the second Godslayer. Chapter 10:14. In front of the God's Slayer authority, the so-called cultivation of the three stages of the divine spirit realm was completely useless. Not to mention, now that the God realm was destroyed and the heaven realm was sealed, it was extremely difficult to even produce a powerhouse above the martial God realm in the 9 realms of the human realm. Not to mention cultivating the 3 stages of the divine spirit realm and stepping into the divine venerable realm. Man Kuangzuan? No. Perhaps it's more appropriate to call you Man Wangzun. Do you have the right to oppose me? 1,000,000 years ago, he wanted to steal Wang Zun's position and get his hands on the divine king authority, but he was no match for me, let alone now. Feng Yu's voice was extremely cold. His body was covered in a layer of blood-red robe that was as thick as blood. His every movement and his words were extremely similar to Godslayer. In a trance, facing Feng Yu, Jian Tianhen's mind was actually shaken. He actually had a feeling that Godslayer was still alive and was right in front of him. Damn it! How could I have such thoughts? Godslayer has already fallen. His body and soul were destroyed, and he died in a sitting posture. Fake! You fake Godslayer, fall for me! Man Kuangzuan was furious. Because Feng Yu called Feng Yu Man Wangzun, it once again evoked his ferocious killing intent towards Feng Yu's strange fate. He was originally a heaven-defying genius, and if he hadn't schemed in the past, how could he have ended up in such a miserable state? He was clearly the second king-level deity in the ancient realm in 1,000,000 years, and yet no one knew what had happened. Even those guys who were also the 9 supreme gods didn't know that Man Kuangzuan was once Wang Zun, the second quasi-divine king who occupied Wang Zun's position. Die! I will kill you! Jian Tianhen was no longer Jian Tianhen, but Man Kuangzuan. He strode over. His robes fluttered in the wind, and he exuded a terrifying aura. At this moment, he was using the Kenshin of Gojoseon's strongest sword technique that he had stolen from Xianjian Valkyrie, the God King Destroyer's sword. With his identity as a body refiner, It was clearly inappropriate for him to use the God King of Annihilation sword, which was a supreme law of Sword Dao. However, apart from Man Kuangzuan's identity as a body cultivator, his martial god level of life force couldn't be faked. With the level of a deity's life form, even a level 1 deity would be able to unleash 20 to 30% of the sword's power. Although 20 to 30% of the sword's power didn't sound very powerful, it was more than enough to kill the ghost sword god or even a level 2 peak god emperor in a battle of life and death. This was because he was about to use the God King of Annihilation sword, Kenshin of Gojoseon's strongest sword technique. Die. Man Kuangzuan walked over step by step. The terrifying aura of Sword Dao on his body was suppressed to the extreme at this moment, overlapping and reaching the limit of its power. Boom! Sword energy burst forth. At this moment, Man Kuangzuan, who had walked in front of Fang Yu, unleashed the God King of Annihilation sword, the ultimate power of his strongest sword technique. He didn't have a long sword in his hand. Man Kuangzuan didn't need a long sword to use this technique. With his level 1 deity body refiner body, he was the strongest divine sword in the human world. Using his body as a sword, he slashed out this absolutely terrifying God King of Annihilation sword. If the terrifying slash that Ghost Sword God had unleashed in his fury was said to be the strongest attack in the human world, then at this moment, Man Kuangzuan, who used his body as a sword to unleash the God King of Annihilation sword, could create a destructive power that far exceeded the limits of the human world. This sword was enough to dominate the heaven realm. In the heaven realm, it could be considered the ultimate power of the heaven realm. In comparison, the difference between the two was obvious. The power of the God King of Annihilation sword that Man Kuangzuan unleashed at this moment was thousands of times stronger than the Ghost Sword God's slash. It was even tens of thousands of times stronger. Today, the battle here could even be seen as a collision between Kenshin of Gojoseon's Sword Dao and Godslayer's Dao of Slaughter. Now, it was no longer just a fierce battle between Fang Yu and Jian Tianhen. Instead, it was a collision between two God Kings in the ancient region. This was because the item that Fang Yu had opened with the help of the Supreme Treasure Chest could only borrow the power of Godslayer at the first level of the Divine Spirit Realm. Man Kuangzuan, who had unleashed the God King of Annihilation sword, was also at the first level of the Divine Spirit Realm. At the same time, in the Mystic Origin mountain range, the wind and clouds surged, and the azure dragon swept across the heaven and earth. All kinds of extraordinary phenomena of heaven and earth penetrated the barrier of heaven and earth and seeped into the ancient region at this moment. In the entire ancient region, billions of living beings and countless terrifying experts also sensed the aura of the two God Kings at this moment. The aura of Kenshin of Gojoseon's Sword Dao, and the terrifying aura of Godslayer's Blood and Slaughter. Boom! Suddenly, the entire ancient region was in an uproar. At this moment, even if it was the powers of the 12 martial gods that stood proudly at the peak of the mortal dimension, they could only ceaselessly crawl and tremble like ants that were deeply afraid of being affected. The aura of two God Kings? Damn it! What's going on? Why didn't we, the martial god ancestors of the 12 overlords of the ancient region, know anything about this? Heavens! Didn't the two God Kings die one after another a million years ago? Why is there such a pure aura of two God Kings in that direction? Could it be that the direct descendants of the two God Kings are fighting? Something's not right. Something's not right. Why? Why are the aura of the two God Kings fighting at the Divine Spirit Realm? Billions of living beings in the 9 realms trembled in fear. Even the martial gods who stood in the sky and looked in the direction of the Mystic Origin mountain range felt uneasy when they woke up from the shock. It was as if a great disaster was about to befall them. The battle between two God Kings was an unparalleled disaster to the human world. Moreover, they were not ordinary divine spirit. Instead, they were the descendants of the two God Kings who cultivated the Tao of the two God Kings, the Supreme God King Sword Tao, and the Supreme Tao of Slaughter. Many martial gods did not even dare to get close to the place where the two God Kings were fighting, because they would die. In the human world, the limit of martial arts was the martial god realm. Above that was the strongest martial god realm that was infinitely close to the third stage of the divine spirit realm. The human world could not give birth to a god king. The martial god realm in the human world was only equivalent to a demigod. In front of the battle between the two God Kings and the descendants of the two God Kings, some of the aftershocks were enough to wipe out all the demigods in the human world. Sanguinati and Infernal Deity fled back to the Templar Hall's base in a sorry state. They looked at the mystic Origin mountain range with fear in their eyes. Lunatic! How dare he challenge the Godslayer? Chapter 10:15. The martial god realm was the limit of the human realm. At this moment, in the depths of the mystic Origin mountain range, in the netherworld, there were two genuine divine spirit realm experts fighting. Both of them were using the Tao of divine kings from the ancient region. Good timing. If you're just going to waste my time here, I won't be able to do anything about it. Since you've taken the initiative to attack me, you're dead meat today. You're using Kenshin of Gojoseon's ultimate sword to kill me. Then I, Fong Yu, will use Godslayer's ultimate Tao of Slaughter to fight back against you. Seeing Man Kwangzuan use the God King Destroyer sword, Fong Yu's eyes showed no fear, only arrogance and indifference. At this moment, he was both Fong Yu and Godslayer. Boom! As Fong Yu's voice fell, the mighty power that was holding the shattered world together was instantly retracted by Fong Yu. Fong Yu did not draw his sword, because although the Scarlet Flame Divine sword in his hand was not of a low grade, it still could not bear Godslayer's ultimate Tao of Slaughter. Kenshin of Gojoseon was an extremely pure sword cultivator, walking the Tao of Slaughter, and finally becoming a supreme divine king with the authority of a divine king. As for the King of Godslaughter, although he was also a sword cultivator, he was the exact opposite. He walked the ultimate Tao of Slaughter and then cultivated the Tao of Sword. In the end, he reached the peak and became the third supreme godly king of the ancient region. Sword, come. Sever the vicissitudes. Facing Man Kwangzuan's God King Destroyer sword, Fong Yu did not dare to be careless. His eyes were sharp and cold, and at this moment, he was going all out. After all, this was a clash of Tao of divine kings. If he was careless, even if Godslayer's divine power was in the first stage of the divine spirit realm, there was still a risk of death in front of Man Kwangzuan. Boom! The netherworld was completely shattered into nothingness. The mountains, rivers, trees, and forests in the entire world disappeared at this moment, replaced by chaotic darkness, and in the depths of the darkness, there was a void turbulence that was gradually eroding. In the endless darkness of chaos, only two figures stood, emitting an extremely strong divine power radiance. At this moment, the two of them were the sun that illuminated the endless darkness. Boom! In front of Fong Yu, a long sword that was completely formed from the thick blood-like killing aura on his body appeared. This long sword was the supreme Tao of Slaughter of the Godslayer King. This technique's name Slayer. Godslayer was Godslayer's Tao. At his peak, Godslayer had once used this technique with the Godslayer sword in his hand, severely injuring the white-robed God King in the Godfiend altar of the divine world of the ancient region. Fong Yu shouted. His mind controlled this terrifying divine sword, and it slashed towards Man Kwangzuan's Godslayer sword. At the same time, on Fong Yu's body, all of Godslayer's divine power, which was as thick as blood, had gathered into this terrifying long sword. He had finally revealed his true strength. It allowed this overbearing supremacy to see through the truth. As expected, Feng Yu was not Godslayer's reincarnation, and this divine power was not something that Godslayer had left behind in the Godslayer's sword fragment before he died. Feng Yu and the King of Godslayers had nothing to do with one another other than the inheritance they shared. Who knew where Feng Yu had gotten this Godslayer's power from? After this, Feng Yu would return to being a divine emperor and… Ha ha! The heavens are protecting me, Jian Tianhen. After this, you won't be able to fight anymore. A mere divine emperor ant won't be able to stop me from taking 2 Godslayer sword fragments. Man Kuangzuan laughed arrogantly. When he looked at Feng Yu again, his eyes were filled with mockery. An ant, in the end, was still an ant. Even if he had temporarily become the Tiger King, it wouldn't be long before the fact that he was just an ant would be exposed. 3 Godslayer sword fragments had been gathered. On top of that, the strongest ghost sword god had fallen, the bright sun god was wandering in the ghost hell, and the cold moon god was sealed in Ao Long Wu City by him. Once Man Kuangzuan obtained the 3 Godslayer sword fragments, excluding the good and evil gods, the good and evil gods were nowhere to be found. In this world, in the 9 realms of the human realm, even in the ancient region, heaven, earth, and the 3 realms, no one would be able to stop him, Man Kuangzuan, from becoming the divine king. At this thought, Man Kuangzuan laughed even louder. He was extremely happy, as if he could already see the moment he became the divine king. After all, the Kenshin of Gojoseon had caused chaos in the 3 realms 2 million years ago. He was a monstrous genius and ruled over billions of lives in the ancient region. As for the Godslayer, he became the divine king a million years ago. Then, he fought fiercely against the divine king from beyond the heavens and was heavily injured. In the end, he fought against the 9 gods. Although they all fell, the Godslayer couldn't stop the obsession in his heart and died in the God realm. Comparing them, this Godslayer was obviously much weaker than the Kenshin of Gojoseon. Of course, the supreme Tao of slaughter couldn't compare to the supreme Tao of sword. Man Kuangzuan thought. The best result of a clash between the Godslayer's sword and the God King of Destruction's sword is that they both turn into ashes. Brat, you've exhausted all of the Godslayer's divine power. What can you use to fight me? Man Kuangzuan was still laughing. At this moment, in the chaotic darkness, the terrifying God King sword of annihilation and the terrifying God-slaying sword of blood chi finally collided. In an instant, in the endless darkness, an incomparable radiance shot out in all directions. If the clash between the 2 supreme Tao of gods had taken place in the ancient region's human realm, it would have killed all living beings in a region of millions of miles. One of the 9 realms of the human realm would have been wiped off the map and become one of the 8 realms of the ancient region's human realm. Man Kuangzuan, you're wrong. The supreme Tao of slaughter that the Godslayer cultivates is far stronger than the supreme Tao of sword of Kenshin of Gojoseon. At this moment, looking at the clash between the 2 supreme Tao of gods, a look of pity appeared in Feng Yu's eyes. He looked deeply at the complacent Man Kuangzuan. A million years ago, Godslayer was fighting against a terrifying otherworldly God King. That was the white-clothed God King, Kong Tae-Wu. Although Feng Yu had only met the white-clothed God King, Kong Tae-Wu, outside of the ancient region's gate of gods and devils, at the ancient region's gate of gods and devils. But even so, Feng Yu could faintly see that the white-clothed God King had a transcendent status among the 100 or so kings of gods on the ancient region's gate of gods and devils. The otherworldly God King that Godslayer had defeated was Kong Tae-Wu. He was definitely not some mediocre divine king. Chapter 10:16. Even Kenshin of Gojoseon didn't dare to act rashly in front of the white-cloaked God King Kong Tae-Wu. the white-cloaked God-king existed before Kenshin of Gojoseon in the ancient God-Devil altar. Clearly, the white-cloaked God-king that God-Slayer repelled was one of the leaders of the God-kings in the ancient God-Devil altar. God-Slayer was able to repel the white-cloaked God-King Kong Tae-woo despite being heavily injured. This was definitely an unparalleled feat. At the very least, Kenshin of Gojoseon couldn't do such a thing. Especially after Fong Yu used the Supreme Tao of Slaughter and unleashed the God-Slayer sword. Recalling the complete God-King Annihilation Sword's power that was inherited from Kenshin of Gojoseon, one could clearly see how powerful God-Slayer was. If God-Slayer were to fight Kenshin of Gojoseon in his peak state, God-Slayer would definitely win. Ha 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 ha! What a joke! You ant, what the hell do you know about the Tao of God-Kings? How can God-Slayer's Tao of Slaughter compare to Kenshin of Gojoseon's Tao of Sword? In the endless years of the ancient domain's 3 realms, a total of 3 God-Kings were born. The ancient God-Kings lived for hundreds of millions of years and died outside the ancient domain. Kenshin of Gojoseon caused chaos in the 3 realms with his army. After becoming a God-King, no one knows where he went. However, he must have gone to the ancient God-Devil altar. In comparison, the last God-King, the King of God-Slayers, is far too inferior. He was the only God-King that died in battle. When talking about God-Slayer, Man Kwangzuen's face was filled with mockery. He held Kenshin of Gojoseon in high esteem. Towards this God-Slayer who had fallen and contributed to the 9 great gods, he was especially disdainful. Far away in the ancient region, at the ancient God-Fiend altar amidst the chaos and darkness, 2 figures radiating with divine radiance that resembled the sun and moon slowly opened their eyes at this moment. These 2 people were the white-cloaked God-King Kong Tae-woo and the ancient domain's Kenshin of Gojoseon. In the ancient domain's 3 realms, I seem to have heard someone mention your name and the God-Slayer's name? The white-cloaked God-King Kong Tae-woo was still smiling, making people couldn't tell what he was thinking. Whatever name is spoken of, the gods will definitely do it. It was the same for ordinary divine spirit realm expert. Not to mention, in the ancient God-Devil altar, this was the Kenshin of Gojoseon who held the authority of a God-King. He was a powerful God-King even in the chaotic world. In the ancient domain's outer sky, Kenshin of Gojoseon had also heard Man Kwangzuen's words. At this moment, in Man Kwangzuen's eyes, Kenshin of Gojoseon was the strongest of the 3 God-Kings in the ancient domain's outer sky. His face was flushed red and he couldn't speak. After a long time, Kenshin of Gojoseon squeezed out a sentence. White-cloaked God-King Kong Tae-woo, the ancient God-Devil altar, the 2nd expert on the God-King list. You were forced to retreat by that God-Slayer a million years ago. I, Kenshin of Gojoseon, couldn't even last 3 moves against you. How can I compare to that God-Slayer? The ancient God-Devil altar, the God-King list, recorded the rankings of all the God-Kings born in the 10 Directions macro world. The person ranked first on the God-King list was the God-Slayer, who killed the 9 paramount gods a million years ago and passed away alone in the Twilight world. The first on the God-King list, the God-Slayer. If it wasn't for that little guy who had the potential to inherit the God-Slayer's authority and power, I, Kong Tae-woo, wouldn't have personally met him on the God-Devil altar and explained everything about the chaotic world to him. As Kong Tae-woo spoke slowly, the smile on his face gradually disappeared and was replaced by an incomparably solemn expression. The strongest expert on the ancient God-Devil altar, the white-cloaked God-King Kong Tae-woo, stared fixedly at the towering God-Fiends outside the altar and sighed after a long time. The 10 Directions macro worlds desperately need the birth of a second God-Slayer. Otherwise, once the God-Devil altar's defensive line is breached, all the living beings' worlds will be devoured by this group of God-Fiends. I hope this little guy can inherit most of the God-Slayer's power when he inherits the God-Slayer's position. If this God-Slayer had been able to guard the ancient God-Devil altar in the past, he would have definitely become a supreme expert in the chaotic world. With his potential, he might even be qualified to challenge the God King's authority, the divine spirit heavenly emperor that can only be born in the chaotic world. The white-cloaked God King sighed slowly. At this very moment, the 100+ God Kings on the God Devil altar were all silent. They stared fixedly at the terrifying God Fiends in the chaotic world with indifferent expressions. 1,000,000 years ago, a supreme God King was born in the 10 Directions macro-worlds, and that was God Slayer. Unfortunately, God Slayer had not descended to the God Devil altar until his death. Instead, he had displayed his terrifying might in the chaotic world's defensive line. However, such a powerful divine king had chosen to pass away in the ancient domain. How sad and lamentable was that ancient realm! In the chaotic darkness, Man Kuangzuan was still laughing wantonly. Fang Yu didn't say a word, but the pity in his eyes deepened. Boom! The chaotic darkness trembled. At this moment, the God King Destroyer's sword trembled violently, and the God Slayer's sword seemed to be on the verge of shattering. This made Man Kuangzuan even more pleased. That's what I said. How can the Tao of a fallen God King compare to the supreme sword Tao of the monstrous Kenshin of Gojoseon? Kenshin of Gojoseon's supreme sword Tao is indeed the strongest. It wasn't a waste for me to keep that traitor Xianjian Valkyrie alive for so many years just to steal the Kenshin of Gojoseon's inheritance. Man Kuangzuan was exceptionally pleased, and his laughter became louder and louder. However, what happened next was extremely inconceivable. Man Kuangzuan, who was still pleased with himself just a moment ago, had a drastic change in expression. He was terrified to the extreme. Boom! The God Slayer's sword that should have been on the verge of shattering actually devoured the God King Destroyer's sword at this moment. At this very moment, in the chaotic darkness, the only thing that was shining was the shadow of a blood-red giant sword. Subsequently, this blood-red giant sword shadow, the peerlessly terrifying God Slayer's sword, cut through the chaotic darkness and charged straight towards Man Kuangzuan. How is this possible? God Slayer, he's just a fallen God King. How can he defeat the Tao of the monstrous Kenshin of Gojoseon? This is impossible. It's fake. It must be fake. Kenshin of Gojoseon's supreme sword Tao is the strongest. How can it be defeated? Man Kuangzuan roared crazily. He couldn't believe that everything in front of him was real. However, regardless of whether Man Kuangzuan believed it or not, the God Slayer's sword had already attacked and slashed down heavily towards him. Chapter 10:17. In the end, the King of God Slayers showed mercy before his death. Otherwise, the 10 supreme gods wouldn't have died just like that. Their souls would have been destroyed long ago. At this very moment, Fang Yu, who was watching this scene, understood something in his heart. He recalled the slaughter order he had obtained when he first stepped into the ancient region. Most importantly, in the mysterious space of the all-directional slaughter order, he saw a crazy figure of a murderer. At this moment, Fang Yu finally understood. The figure of the Mad King of Godslayers sealed within the command of Massacre of 10 Directions is the killing intent of the King of Godslayers himself. The supreme Tao of slaughter, without that bone-deep obsession to kill, unexpectedly became even stronger. Immersed in the Tao of slaughter, and then transcended the Tao of slaughter. As expected of the King of Slaughter. It's a pity that I only inherited the memories of Kenshin of Gojoseon, and did not have the opportunity to peek into the Tao of slaughter that Godslayer cultivated. In the chaotic darkness, Fang Yu said slowly and then sighed faintly. Boom! On the other side, the terrifying blood-red giant sword finally descended and stood on Man Kuangzuan's body. No. Don't kill me! Kill me! I will madly seek revenge on you. Fang Yu, you lowly ant, Don't fight me to the death. You can't bear the consequences of this. Man Kuangzuan roared in despair. At the same time, he looked fiercely at Fang Yu, full of bone-chilling threats. To this, Fang Yu did not respond at all. Under this god-slaying sword, no matter how strong Savage Sovereign's foundation was, there was no way he would be able to survive. Man Kuangzuan's soul had been destroyed, and his body and soul had been destroyed. What else could he use to take revenge on Fang Yu? Crazy words. Extremely laughable. Boom. With a loud boom, Man Kuangzuan's body was reduced to ashes. Not even a speck of ash was left behind by the sword. Not only that, even the endless darkness and chaos was cut open by the god-slaying sword's absolute power. This crack connected to the mystic origin mountain range's ancient realm. The lush green mountain range was right in front of Fang Yu's eyes. At the same time, the aura of the Godslayer sword made all living beings in the mystic origin mountain range tremble. Immediately, countless demonic beasts turned into a frenzy and fled in all directions. Regarding this, Fang Yu did not mind. His footsteps were light and he recovered his Emperor Realm cultivation. He calmly returned to the ancient region from the darkness. Originally, Godslayer had used up all of his godly power. In this chaotic darkness, Fang Yu was still pondering how he could dare to leave before the void turbulence and chaos engulfed him. Unexpectedly, after the god-slaying sword's power was exhausted, it actually sent him back to the ancient region. Phew! I survived. His figure landed from the sky. Fang Yu stepped on the soil of the mystic origin mountain range and felt the warmth of the sun that he had not felt for a long time. He heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment in Fang Yu's hand, there was a card that condensed the sunset of the divine world. The card that condensed the figure of the divine king sitting cross-legged in the sunset slowly turned into ashes. One of the items from the super treasure chest, the system's slaughter treasure chest, did not disappoint Fang Yu in the end. At the critical moment, the super treasure chest had opened up something that could save his life. A special identity card. The Godslayer King. For one day, he could use the Godslayer King's godly power to his heart's content. Of course, the Godslayer King's godly power was only at the level of a first-stage divine spirit. However, this was enough for Fang Yu. As long as his godly power was not exhausted, even if he was in the netherworld, he could kill Man Kuangzuan, who was also a first-stage divine spirit, within a day's time by guerrilla warfare. Originally, Fang Yu was quite happy. However, what made Fang Yu a little speechless was that this special identity card had a restriction imposed on it. That was regarding the Godslayer King's godly power. He could only attack passively. He could only attack passively. At that time, when he saw this restriction, Fang Yu was almost scared to death. What kind of situation was this? There was actually such a restriction. If it was not for the restriction, he was afraid that he would be able to kill all of the 4 gods that appeared in the netherworld. This was also why Fang Yu was indifferent and did not attack when the 2 weakest gods, Infernal Deity and Sanguinati, fled. It was not that he did not want to attack, but that he could not. In the netherworld, the 4 gods are Yi Wangzuan, Man Wangzun, Infernal Deity, and Sanguinati. 2 Wangzun have fallen one after another. Such a battle record is not bad. Among the 10 great gods, 3.5 have fallen in my hand. Shinmyozan, Yi Wangzuan, and Wangzun are considered 3. As for the 2 separated souls of the Archdevil Heavenly Master, they are only considered half. Such a battle record was enough to make Fang Yu satisfied. Sanguinati and Infernal Deity were almost scared out of their wits in this battle. They thought that he was the reincarnation of Godslayer. Under normal circumstances, they would not dare to attack him again. Oh right, I almost forgot. There are still 9 divine crystals in the chaotic darkness that have not been collected. Those are top-notch divine crystals formed by the fall of the 9 great supreme gods. Fang Yu was very anxious. he flew up and rushed toward the eternal crack in the sky above his head. If he did not take them away now, when other martial gods were bold enough to explore this place in the future, it would definitely be taken away by them. Unfortunately. At the other end of the crack, the 9 top-level divine crystals shone like stars. At this moment, the void turbulence had already covered this place. Moreover, the beasts of chaos that lived in the chaotic darkness had rushed over greedily after smelling the aura of the 9 top-level divine crystals. When a small world was destroyed, it would be swallowed by the chaotic darkness. In the chaotic darkness, there were 2 dangers that could take one's life. One of them was the void turbulence. Only martial gods were confident that they could break through it. If a 9-star great sovereign dared to break through, he would almost certainly die. The second one was the beasts of chaos. The beasts of chaos that lived in the chaotic darkness were extremely powerful. The weak ones were comparable to 7-star martial gods. Even some deities had to avoid the stronger ones. Damn it! You want to get your hands on my divine crystal? Do you really think that I, Feng Yu, am a pushover? Without the support of Godslayer's divine power, I can't deal with you? Looking at the beasts of chaos that gathered and crossed the void turbulence, Feng Yu was instantly furious. The aura of the divine spirit realm that he and Man Kuangzuan had left behind could intimidate many martial gods in the 9 zones of the human realm. However, it could not intimidate this group of beasts of chaos. The powerful beasts of chaos were qualified to hunt deities. The beasts of chaos were also on the opposite side of deities. They were considered to be living beings of the same origin as the deities and demons of the chaotic world. Chapter 10:18. A quiet wind, blizzard, thunder. Just as Feng Yu was about to forcefully summon the 3 injured martial gods, he suddenly sensed a ray of sword light that crossed thousands of miles and instantly charged into the crack in the sky. It headed straight for the 9 top divine crystal that was surrounded by the beasts of chaos. A martial god expert has come to investigate and wants to be the first to take my 9 top divine crystal? Feng Yu was so angry that he stomped his feet. His rationality told him that he was only at the Emperor realm at the moment. He was not qualified to face a top martial god who dared to trespass into the darkness of chaos and fight with the beasts of chaos. However, he left just like that. Feng Yu was not satisfied. Boom! An incomparably loud sword chime resounded. In an instant, a terrifying sword aura burst forth from the darkness of chaos. The powerful sword aura gave Feng Yu a familiar feeling. It was Feng Yu's old acquaintance. He was even Kenshin of Gojoseon's fellow disciple, Xianjian Valkyrie, who was comparable to an ultimate martial god. In an instant, a pungent smell of blood burst forth from the darkness of chaos. Each of the hundreds and thousands of primal chaos beasts that had gathered was equivalent to a 7-star martial god realm. Among them, the leader was even close to the ultimate martial god realm. Even so, under this frightening sword, the chaos beasts were slaughtered one by one as if they were vegetables. The remains of the chaos beasts littered the ground. Xianjian Valkyrie, 1 man and 1 sword, swept in all directions and almost slaughtered all the thousands of beasts of chaos that had gathered. Then, Xianjian Valkyrie walked out of the crack in the sky with 9 top divine crystal that gave off an unparalleled divine glow in his arms. Senior brother Xianjian. Feng Yu was overjoyed when he saw him. He moved quickly and walked toward Xianjian Valkyrie. Based on his understanding of Xianjian Valkyrie's character, he had always been arrogant. He had always compared himself to Kenshin of Gojoseon. He wanted to create his own sword principle. Xianjian Valkyrie would not have any thoughts about the 9 divine crystal that carried other principles. As expected, Xianjian Valkyrie's cold face softened when he heard him respectfully call him senior brother. After that, He tossed all 9 top-grade divine crystals to Feng Yu. He glanced fearfully at the remnant auras of the battle between the 2 successors of God-level divine kings in the chaotic darkness. What's going on? Apart from you and me, why is there a 3rd disciple of Kenshin of Gojoseon? And he's at the God level. He even used such a terrifying technique like the God King Destroyer sword. The God King Destroyer sword is the most brilliant sword move that the master of Kenshin of Gojoseon has achieved in his lifetime of sword principle. I haven't even touched the sword at all. Why is that God level being able to use the power of the sword? Xianjian Valkyrie obviously did not know that Feng Yu was the descendant of Godslayer who had clashed with Man Quangzuan, who had stolen the inheritance of Kenshin of Gojoseon. He was also the descendant of the other God-level king of God-level. After all, even if Xianjian Valkyrie racked his brains, he would never have thought that Feng Yu, who was just an ant in the Emperor realm, would have a trump card that could allow him to unleash the power of a God-level being. Feng Yu carefully put the 9 Supreme Divine Crystal into the system space one by one. He was exceptionally careful. After all, these 9 Supreme Divine Crystal were probably enough for him to cultivate all the way to the 3rd Divine Crystal realm. How could Feng Yu not be serious? After putting away the Divine Crystal, Feng Yu looked at the battlefield of chaos and darkness. His eyes flickered slightly. Then, he chose his words carefully and spoke slowly. Senior brother, I was in the Mystic Origin mountain range and witnessed the entire clash between the descendant of Godslayer and the descendant of Kenshin of Gojoseon. At this point, Feng Yu paused. He looked at Xianjian Valkyrie, who was still unaware that the descendant of Kenshin of Gojoseon had been stolen, and said mysteriously, Senior brother, do you know the identity of that fake God-level master's descendant? Hearing this, Xianjian Valkyrie frowned. The fake descendant of Kenshin of Gojoseon. This title seemed a little strange. But he was also a smart person. When he heard the words God-level and Feng Yu's level, a sharp divine light appeared in his eyes, as well as a look of disbelief. He suddenly vaguely guessed something. Could it be, when I lost my mind and my 3 souls were trapped in Kanzu, I leaked the inheritance of Lord Kenshin of Gojoseon? How is that possible? That's absolutely impossible. Even if that old thing Kanzu is a god walking in the human world, he can't pry open my mouth. Hearing this, Feng Yu secretly curled his lip. Ordinary gods might not be able to pry open the restriction left by Kenshin of Gojoseon, but Man Quangzuan was different. He was a top supreme god who had once controlled Wang Zun's status. He was also a scheming and extremely insidious guy. There was no lack of cunning tricks like this. Avoiding the restriction left by Kenshin of Gojoseon and thinking of ways to steal the Kenshin of Gojoseon's inheritance from Xianjian Valkyrie's body. Man Wang Zun definitely had a lot of ways. Senior brother, you guessed right. That fake descendant of Kenshin of Gojoseon is a god-level god. He is the strongest ancestor of the Jian clan, Kanzu Jian Tianhen. But fortunately, the other descendant of Godslayer used a terrifying secret technique and killed Kanzu Jian Tianhen. Feng Yu said slowly, with an unconcealable sense of relief in his voice. To Wang Zun's death. In the human world, Feng Yu only needed to pay attention to the true soul of God Han Yu. Once he took the 3rd fragment of the God's Slayer sword from the Jian clan, he would be able to obtain the complete God's Slayer sword. Once the 3 fragments of the God's Slayer sword were gathered, the 4th fragment would come automatically. Before collecting the 3rd fragment of the God's Slayer sword, Feng Yu needed to refine 1 billion Xian crystals and an inferior divine crystal to step into the 9-star Great Sovereign Realm. After the Supreme Treasure Chest was opened, in addition to the special God's Slayer King card, there was also an inferior divine crystal and 10 superior divine crystal. These resources, in addition to the 1 billion Xian crystals from the other 4 greater sects in the northern region, would be enough for Feng Yu to break through to the martial god realm. It's really him, that old thief. I knew it. After this old bastard suppressed me, he didn't kill me because he wanted something from me. I didn't expect him to steal the Kenshin of Gojoseon's inheritance from me. When Xianjian Valkyrie heard this, he was furious to the extreme. However, he quickly came to his senses. That godly spirit realm expert, the successor of the king of god-slayers, had actually killed the old thief, sword ancestor? How was that possible? That old thief was a god-level god realm existence in the human world. Moreover, he was extremely sinister and cunning. He was good at hiding his strength. Even the martial god realm ancestors of the Jian clan did not know how many trump cards Kenzu had. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.